Hello, YouTube. This is Dark Tower Palaver. This is our actually our podcast, and we are doing it on YouTube here. So if you're watching this video, you're basically watching our live recording. At the time, it's live. Obviously, when you're watching it, may not be of our podcast. And this podcast is going to be a book club where we go through, I guess chapter by chapter of the Dark Tower series. So yeah, pretty big one this episode as well. So glad you can join us. If you guys want to subscribe to the channel and stuff, you can do all that. Of course, we'll remind you in just a second. So in a second, we'll hit our intro for our podcast itself, the podcast proper. And once that's hit, we will, that's when like the podcast people would start hearing what we were doing, and we'll have announcements there where we'll cover all that as well. So let's go ahead and get started. There's got a lot of fun stuff to cover here as we finish up this quote unquote book.
Last one for the year.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like because the way this one's broken down, it's two big books, the inside of this book with a few chapters, and the chapters are huge. So finishing up the first half of this book. Which is book one titled Jake. So, Yep. And then like Peter said, last one for 2021. So that'll leave us in a fun little neat spot to open up with book two of this book. We'll be starting in 2022. That seems all fitting and nice and neat and stuff. The kind of way I like it to work out. Like I know, of course, we didn't plan it that way. But, if we had that kind of sight to like look at it overall and like plan it all out, this is exactly how it would have fallen. So.
Yeah, but we also had episodes where we missed during the year with, work and personal things coming up and everything. So, it would have never works out the way you want it to.
Yeah.
So the fact that this is where we're concluding is with, a huge part of the book is Jake. And this is Jake here. We're hopefully going to get him through,
Yeah. So yeah, we'll go ahead and hit the intro real quick and then get started.
The Dark Tower by Stephen King. The man in black fled across the desert, and the gunslinger followed. Go then. There are other worlds than these. Death, but not for you, gunslinger. It's time we had our own palaver, I think, and it's going to take a while.
And yet, dauntless, the slug horn to my lips I set and blew. Child Roland to the Dark Tower came.
We are content, one from many. Let the palaver begin.
Hello and welcome to Dark Tower Palaver. This is our podcast covering Stephen King's magnum opus, the Dark Tower series. My name is Tad.
And I'm Peter.
And we're here for book club number 12 for the Wastelands. And this is going to be kind of a big one in terms of we are closing out book two of this book. This one's split into two books, and then there's 4 or 5 chapters, something.
We're closing out book two?
Book one.
Book one of two. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so it's book one, Jake. And there's only 3 chapters. And then those each have 40 to 50 subchapters. Right. So the way King broke this one down, it's kind of interesting that because we definitely didn't plan this, but we are going to finish up book one on our last book club of 2021.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting, and then start up book 2 into 2022. That's pretty awesome. I would love to say that we had that all planned out, but there's
no way that with all the variables of a year and scheduling conflicts and everything that happened on purpose.
Yeah.
We're not that crafty.
No. I would love to pretend that we are, but definitely not. But yeah, I just lost my spot too by clicking on another book.
How dare you?
Oh, I know. Good old Kindle. So that's that's where we're at on this episode. We'll go ahead and start with our introductions and let you know that first of all, we're not going to have to warn you about spoilers because a majority of this episode is going to be spoiler free. With our book clubs, we try to make these places that are safe for someone that maybe hasn't finished the whole series yet. And just recently, we changed it to where we're now going to cover spoilers, but we're only going to do that at the very end of the episode, and we'll make sure that you have ample warning before we dive into that stuff. So if you are maybe just wandering through book 6 right now, you could listen to this episode, but then just stop the episode when we tell you to stop it, and spoilers lie ahead. So these are the safe areas. Our roundtables definitely are not. Those ones just spoil. I mean, sometimes I think recently didn't we spoil something before the actual spoiler warning, like before our intros? So a spoiler came up. So yeah, roundtables are definitely not safe. So you're in the right spot if that's what you're looking for. And then if you want to find our podcast, you can find us on Apple Podcasting. You can find, or Apple Podcasts, whatever you want to call it there. Spotify, Stitcher, any podcasting service. If you want to subscribe, rate, and review us on any of those, we'd appreciate that. You can find the show notes at darktowerpalaver.com. There really isn't show notes for book club episodes, but if you want to find like our questions for new listeners, you can find that over there, as well as all of our previous episodes, as well as the show notes that go along with those. If you want to support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. We just recorded a hangout yesterday, as a matter of fact. So we have those as well as our Discord server and that kind of stuff. If you want to support us, you can do that there. Then if you want to contact us, Peter can let you know the best way to do that.
Best way is through email. It's darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. And then, like we were talking about, we stream our shows here. It's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. If you wanted to watch live while we're recording, like the videos, subscribe, ring the bell to get notifications for when we're going live. And then our social media is facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. Our Twitter is @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. And we have an Instagram. It's darktowerpalaver, all one word with no spaces there. And then you can check out our merch. It's tpublic.com/users/darktowerpalaver. We got 2 different logos. We got the regular logo that Tad's holding up there, the Dark Tower Palaver.
On the cushion.
And then the hashtag Tad is terrible.
The slanderous one.
The better of the two, in my opinion. My humble opinion.
You would say that.
You can get it on shirts. Tad's wearing his shirt. I'm wearing my shirt.
Yep.
There's long sleeve, short sleeve, tank tops. There's tons of different things. I got a sticker here that I put on my water bottle.
Yeah.
I'm going to get a hashtag Tad is terrible sticker and put it on his bumper one of these days, and he's never going to notice.
Oh, man. Then what I'll do is I'll try to find me like a stuffed version of a small creature in this series I won't mention yet because we're got to worry about spoilers. And I'll just tie it to the back of your car so you're dragging them around.
I'll at least hear that. Stickers are quiet, though.
Stickers are quiet.
There's the quote of the day from Peter. Stickers are quiet.
You know, the best prank I ever saw with like a car was somebody had a laminator and they peeled the lamination, but like they cut it into a shape of some kind and then stuck it to someone's like vehicle because then it's not visible until like water hits and then it like goes around it. So somebody didn't realize that they had it on their vehicle until like it rained or something. Yeah. So that's a real crafty way.
That's pretty crafty
to go about things. But yeah, let's go ahead and dive in. We've got a lot. It was actually pretty startling because there's a lot of short sub chapters in this section. So I don't know how many we normally cover, but I think we're doing nearly 20 in this episode. But it's because there's a lot of small ones. We've kind of mentioned already before in these book clubs that Stephen King tends to jump subchapters when he's jumping from like one perspective to another. So like in this, during the course of this book, especially over the last little bit, we've been jumping between Jake and Roland and company. And King tends to be very good about flipping subchapters to kind of differentiate those. And obviously there's a lot going on here on two sides of things. So it looks a lot more staggering than it is. But let's go ahead and dive in with subchapter 28. Where we left off, Jake had entered the mansion, and as he was maybe kind of wondering why the hell people weren't telling him to stop and get out of there, the door shut on him. And
it sounded like a mausoleum tomb shutting.
Yeah. So that is Jake, and I mean in a house that everyone, it seems, either subconsciously or consciously is scared of. Eddie and his brother went and didn't want to get too close and stuff. And Jake has now entered it, and the door is slammed shut behind him. And we are basically have a demon coming on the other side towards our quartet, basically, as Eddie's trying to build up the door.
Demon has arrived already.
Yeah.
So not coming at them. He's already arrived. It was is it going to be a girl demon? Roland would take it. Boy demon, Susannah would take it.
Yeah.
Turns out it's a boy, so it went right for Susannah.
That's right.
Well, it went right for Eddie, and then she called out and diverted it, and so that's where we're at with the two different groups.
Yep. That's
as we're following here.
Yeah.
Eddie is carving the door in the mud. Roland and Susannah were standing guard waiting for the demon. Demon shows up. Jake's just gone into the house.
Yep. So that's a lot going on. Like, I definitely thought about it last time too when we stopped. I'm like, this would have been like the perfect cutoff for like a serial or something. You know, can they survive? Join us next time. You know,
what will happen in the house?
It's like the perfect cliffhanger. So again, definitely not how we planned it. It just turned out that way. So.
What would be really good is you see Jake like from the outside of the house. You see the door slam close, and then just to be continued. ...
So let's go ahead. Yeah, let's go ahead and dive in here to subchapter 28. And I will go ahead with the first note here. It's a little bit further down. First, we started with kind of giving a little rundown and backstory on Detta and some of her conquests when she was Detta Walker. And it goes on here. It says eventually she would cut one of the honkies out of the pack and lead him back to his car in the parking lot. There she would make out with him. One of the world's greatest soul kissers was Detta Walker, and no slouch with the old fingernails either. That was in parentheses. And it says until he was just about insane, and then she would shut him down. What happened next? Well, that was the question, wasn't it? That was the game. Some of them wept and begged, all right, but not great. Some of them raved and roared, which was better. And although she had been slapped upside the head, punched in the eye, spat upon, once kicked in the ass so hard she had gone sprawling in the gravel parking lot in the red windmill, she had never been raped. And I will pause and say, too, this is also flashing back to when she had legs as well.
Yes,
so,
yes.
And then it goes on and says they had all gone home with blue balls, every damn one of them. Every damn Ofay, one of them.
Yeah, Ofay.
Yeah, which meant in Detta Walker's book that she had was the reigning champion, the undefeated queen of what? Of them. Of all those crew cut, button down, tight ass honky motherfuckers. Until now. So, kind of a cool, because I don't remember how much we learned about Detta. We got some of it, and
a little bit,
you know, like the shoplifting, and that she would like take, you know, things into like just basically like desolate areas and break them and stuff or throw them away. I think we had some hints of this activity from Detta, but certainly not this detailed in terms of what she kind of did, what was her MO necessarily. So this is adding more to it, and obviously kind of framing it in a way to where kind of what her experiences have been, and that now it's changing because, you know, as you alluded to in what we covered last time, you know, these demons are sexual creatures. Yeah. So if it was female, Roland would have dealt with it, and then if it's male, it goes the other way. She takes care of it. So that's kind of where we leave it here.
Yeah.
And I kind of love this little look at her because it just, again, like Detta just she's
so crazy.
Yeah, she's just brutal. You know, and especially because when you try to flash back to what was Odetta like, you know, and like in
prim and proper, and high society, and
and then Detta is just, you know, just going to like honky tonks, just like picking dudes up, and then giving them the old blue balls and potentially getting punched in some cases and stuff. And you know, but again, Detta is such a hard ass that, like, you know, I almost think that she would probably laugh at them a bit. So yeah, pretty.
Well, she did. That's the thing. It's like it even says here, like some of them wept and begged, all right, but not great. Some of them raved and roared, which was better. So she likes the fight. Yeah, you know. Yeah. That's you know, like it says it right there that she liked it when they got rough. You know? Yeah.
And you know what it kind of reminds me of too is flashing back to book 2, when they kept alluding to Detta as almost a predator. You know, like just this predator hunting her prey, and like this is kind of showing that was her MO before all this too. You know, she was a predator. She was going to these places to prey on these people and then basically get them all worked up and then leave them hanging. Like so it kind of just jives with, you know, the hunter that they perceived her as on the beach. She was the same thing in the other world, just it was a different execution of it.
It was a different game.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I don't know, again, I love Detta, man. Like she's just she's a badass, and also just like I don't know. It's just kind of like definitely not a hero, like a hero, probably more of an anti-hero, but she's just great. She cracks me up. What do you got next?
So picking up right where you left off, there was no way to withstand the demon who lived in the speaking ring. No door handles to grab, no car to tumble out of, no building to run back into, no cheek to slap, no face to claw, no balls to kick. If the Ofe, some bitch, was slow getting the message. The demon was on her, and then in a flash, he was in her. So, like, just like that, boom, there we go.
Yeah.
It's on.
Yeah. And then as we go on, we're not covering this next little bit, but throughout this next couple paragraphs, every time it says it dash him or it, dash him. So it's kind of like an interesting way to go about it, that it never relinquishes the it when she's thinking about it.
Right.
She always thinks of it as it and then him as a secondary thing. And I don't know why I like that. It's just kind of a unique writing thing. But I appreciate it because it just kind of looks at like, it almost like, dehumanizes it, and it's a demon, so it shouldn't be fully on humanized anyway, but the fact that it's always it dash him makes it just think that, like, in my mind, it shows that like Detta is perceiving it as like this creature, and then secondarily that it's a male. Like that's
it also goes back to what Roland was saying to her, if it's female it'll go for me, if it's male it'll go for you, but it's still an it just kind of like, it's fluid, it can go one or the other, it's not set as one.
Yeah, I don't know if I perceive it that way. I perceive it more as just like it's a creature. Like it's not like the it is more of like cool. Like the him aspect is like kind of humanizing it, but she never lets it have that without the it to kind of dehumanize it and make it like almost more of an animal.
No,
like,
no, I know. I'm just.
But I don't perceive it as. I think they are, male or female type thing. It's kind of the way Roland. Like, I don't think that it can like. I don't think it's hermaphroditic where it could change. And
yeah, it can. Roland covers that it can choose which one it wants to be.
Yeah, I don't remember that. I because that's why they were planning it out. Because ultimately, it is ultimately going to be one or the other. But yeah, I just love that because again, it's a unique thing from King writing wise. The fact that that he does that. I don't know. Just those kind of things are fun because I just think a lesser writer wouldn't do that. It would just be him or whatever, so just having that, it almost feels like it's like characters within like because it's not actual dialogue, it's like internal, but you get the characters through it still, like you could tell that's like Detta, whereas like Roland, I don't think he would have that same like thing to kind of brace it like that. He would just be like it, or the creature, like that's all he would perceive it as. The demon,
the demon.
Yeah, so for her to have it that way, it's almost like this contempt that's inside Detta's head that we get through that, and I just love that. It's just kind of a cool little character element. From
we kind of get that with Roland in the ring in the first book, where it's just constantly, even when it's talking to him, it comes across as a she, and he's like, "Shut up, demon! Have your way, demon!"
Yeah,
like spitting the name out, basically.
Just very dismissive and stuff. And like Detta, it's just a little bit different because, she's a different character than Roland. I love that. So next, a little bit further down here, Eddie kind of starts to freak out a bit as her clothes start to rip off and she's being kind of thrashed around and stuff. It's not a very pretty sight. And then he turns around to look at her, which obviously is distracting him from what he needs to do, which is obviously important because the faster he gets done, the faster she's done with all of this. So then she yells, "I'm all right." She yelled, "Go on, Eddie. Forget about me. I'm all right." But she wasn't. For the first time since Detta had strode into the sexual battlefield at the age of 13, she was losing. A horrid, engorging coldness plunged into her, and it was like being fucked with an icicle. And so the other thing I always forget is that Detta came about because of the brick. Right. For some reason in my mind, I always think it's the train that caused Detta, especially because that's the big kind of real big reveal for us with the changing as the paramedics with that. But the fact that right there, for one, that it's pretty troubling to say the sexual battlefield at the age of 13.
Yeah, it's very.
But then on top of that, it reminds me, oh yeah, shit, it was the fucking brick that created Detta. Like, I guess. I don't even know what the legs really did. Maybe more empowered.
Destabilized.
Yeah, destabilized the whole thing and empowered Detta to be maybe more in control at times. But yeah, I guess...
Maybe even for longer periods of time as well.
Yeah, because I always kind of lose sight of that. For some reason in my mind, if you would just ask me randomly, I'd probably say that Detta was born out of the subway, more so than the brick. So that just reminds me, because it's like, wait, 13? No, Detta wasn't around. I'm like, oh yeah, I guess.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, so it's just one of those weird little small details that I tend to forget. But yeah, I do love that because again, I think this shows her bravery as well, like the fact that she's taken this on, and as well she's, even though it's saying she wasn't all right, she's saying that she's all right to try to keep Eddie on task. And I think there's a bravery there, to kind of stand up and to kind of take her end of this whole thing, even though it's not good. I just think it's kind of like that metal that we talked about, with like her and with Shardik earlier on. Like, she had some reservations, but the moment that it was going to be her to take the shot, she didn't hesitate. And even with the stones before Shardik, I feel like even we as readers, and Roland saw it as well, Susannah has more of that, gunslinger metal that Eddie still needs to build. Like, she kind of has it up because again, she's also lived, not that Eddie's lived a soft life, but I think she's lived a much harder life. And I think because that it's like calloused her and made her like harder, even though it may be under the surface, but it comes out quickly and easily. So
a lot faster than Eddie's does.
Yeah, and Eddie, I mean, because like in a lot of ways, I think he kind of, even though the drug stuff was bad, I don't think that was really as traumatic. I honestly think we saw most of Eddie's trauma, the stuff with Roland. I really think,
and Henry's death.
And yeah, like that's what I mean. From the time Roland comes in through, I think that's like kind of that's the brick and the subway and all that kind of stuff. And even like the going to the South during the civil rights, like, all this stuff, like, Odetta, Susannah was doing all this stuff and just building all this like toughness up through all this shitty stuff that she went through. Whereas Eddie, like, we kind of saw it. It was all way more recent. So he still has to kind of come to terms with that stuff and allow it to harden him, I guess, whereas she's been hardening for fucking decades. So I find that interesting, because again, here, the fact that she's saying she's all right but she's not, that's a pretty rare thing. You hear about that in war stories and stuff at times, where people will claim they're all right when they've been shot and stuff because somebody's hurt worse or whatever, but it's like other people just scream, and it's like, no, I need help now. And even if there's someone they could see that's worse off, then they don't care. They know that their leg may be blown off and they're screaming for help. So there's a level of bravery there that I think is commendable.
So right after that, it says, dimly she saw Eddie turn away and began drawing in the dirt again. His expression of warm concern fading back into the terrible, concentrated coldness she sometimes felt in him and saw on his face. Well, that was all right, wasn't it? She had told him to go on, to forget her, to do what he needed to do in order to bring the boy over. That was her part of Jake's drawing, and she had no right to hate either of the men who had not twisted her arm or anything else to make her do it. But as the coldness froze her and Eddie turned away from her, she hated them both. Could, in fact, have torn their hunky balls off.
Yeah, so I think that's what I love, too, because, again, King allows that to be shown, that internal element, towards, like, even though she's putting on that brave front, on the inside of her, there is maybe some resentment and that kind of thing. And I just love that, because that's the real, to me, that feels real. That's, like, the duality of existence, like, in like, fiction, especially poor written fiction, generally someone just, is, they say what they say and they are what they say type thing. And it all jives. Mm-hmm. So to have that duality of like, no, I'm fine, but then inside it's like, I fucking hate you because I have to go through this for you type thing. Like, that's a little bit more rare. So I just love it. It gives a lot more complexity to the whole situation and to her. I mean, and not to mention that she's also, the other thing is, do you think that that's more of a Detta thing as well? Or do you think that that's
absolutely.
Just... Yeah.
This all is Detta. It doesn't ever really feel like Susannah. It even starts off with saying, Detta this, Detta that.
Yeah, and the fact it does say honky balls. Yeah. So, I guess, it's, so do you think that that's completely unique to her? Or do you think there's some element of that, like, kind of hatred that she has to go through this to kind of help them that may pour over into Susannah, even if it's slight, not like full on, but
No, because even like the Roland making her call on Detta to take the shot and to shoot the honky muffa targets when he's training her and everything like that. Susannah's a little bit resentful, but she understands it. Like, almost instantly, she understands it.
Yeah,
she may not like it, but she understands it. She's intelligent enough, more so than I would say than Detta, to be able to understand why things are the way they are, why they have to happen. So I think that she's going to be able to get past, this happening Eddie turning away is not going to be a lasting thing for her. Not one of those ones where she's going to hold a grudge and then, later on it's going to come back up and she's going to throw it in his face or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could never see Susannah doing that. Just from book 2, especially in the beginning of book 3, I could never see her being like that.
Yeah, but at the same time, though, in my mind, Susannah is a mix of both, right? Like, she's kind of both in one. Like, whereas Odetta was very one way, Detta was very another way, and Susannah's kind of a mix of the both. So I just think that, in my mind, I think of Susannah as kind of a mixture of both, not, and in a good way that it's balanced. Like, she's not, she doesn't have, like, the ravings of, like, Detta, but she also doesn't have the timidity and stuff of Odetta.
That's funny. That's funny that you think that, because I always think of Detta as a separate character here. That Odetta and Detta combine to make Susannah, but at the same time, she still calls on Odetta and still calls on Detta for specific things. But it's like it's a separate character almost. Like, because when we see Detta in the beginning of book 3 with like Shardik and the target practice and everything like that, it's a completely different woman. And even here, the little bit that we've seen so far from, with the demon here, there's nothing here talking about Susannah. There's never once mentioned of Susannah or anything like that. It's Detta, what Detta went through, what Detta's going through. And then it changes to she and everything like that.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a different character has come out and taken control. Kind of like a Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing.
And so the other thing, I guess, is I never really fully like thought of it that way, but at the same time, like, if you do think of it that way, it actually does kind of make sense, because Detta would be able to handle this this rape and attack, whereas
she'd been prepping it for it. That's the game she plays.
Yeah, so it's like, whereas Susannah or Odetta would have a much harder time with it. So I guess that's I've always perceived it more as like Susannah is kind of a mix of the two. And like that, it's almost more of just like, I don't know, it's weird because it's still kind of the multiple personalities things a bit, but I feel like it's a little bit more like controlled or more, like, it's not just like she's blacking out. I feel like Susannah, I feel like they're all kind of there, but like, Detta's in the back seat, and she'll let her come up to the front seat at certain times, but she's still not taking one hand off the wheel. She may let Detta have one hand of the wheel. Whereas in the old days, it was just like a complete flip, and Odetta just went into the trunk.
Odetta tied you. Yeah, Detta tied Odetta and put her in the trunk, blindfolded, gagged, knocked the fuck out.
Yeah.
Couldn't do anything with it.
Yeah.
But the one that the part that sticks with me, for which helped me this frame of mind, was when Roland asked her, I think it was in the last book club, is Detta still around? And she's like, yeah, that bitch is always nearby.
Yeah.
That's talking about like a separate person. Yeah, it plays into like the multiple personality thing, but it is a separate person. It's not part of her. Susannah's completely separate. And what I picture it as is when Odetta and Detta saw themselves on the beach, Susannah became a result of certain parts of them getting copied, not taken out of them, copied and removed into Susannah. So we still have Odetta and Detta, but we have Susannah, which is the result of their merging, and then they're underneath that. And so they can come forward, like you said, Susannah's holding the wheel, but leaning over and letting Detta come from the back seat to also control. But she's still there. Susannah's still there and still very much in control.
I guess for me, the reason I perceive it is because I'm very compartmentalized with my life. Home Tad versus work Tad, and even work Tad versus like have to put on the boss pants Tad and like maybe write someone up or something. I've been in those circumstances. Like, to me, like, I perceive those as like just different Tads in a slight way, because it's just like, the way that you and I talk, right now versus like, if I remember a few different times having to write people up over the years, like, that's a different Tad than me right now. And then it's also different than the Tad and different than just normal Tad at work. There's just, but I guess that's just me, and I'm very compartmentalized and stuff. So I think that's probably why I'm perceiving it the way that I am, that it's just like, it's all part of one whole, but they're kind of different personifications. Like, I think of like musicians that say that too, where they have a different persona. It's like when they're on stage,
they're a completely different person than when they're home with their families.
Yeah, that's a different person. They have a different mentality, a different way of carrying themselves. And like, I guess that's the way I've always perceived it. Ultimately, I think neither of them are necessarily right or wrong. I think it's just like how you perceive it, because King doesn't really give us like 100% spelled. He doesn't spell it out 100% in terms of like whatever. I think he spells it out enough to where you or I can come to the conclusions that we've come to, and it works, and I think that's what's good. That's what's good about this series in general. And we've found it so far. There's been a lot of stuff where it's like there's interpretations you could take about things and stuff. And that's why that's good. That's good to me, art. Like it's when you get shittier when it's just like, well, no, it's just straight this.
But the worst part about what you're talking about with fandoms, there's straight up fandoms. We're a part of some of the bigger fandoms that have those conversations where the sky is blue. Well, actually, I think the sky is red, and here's my fan theory as to why. It's like, motherfucker, literally right here, there's 3 lines that say the sky is blue. It's a blue like the ocean. It's a blue like a blue jacket. Whatever. It specifically spells out that it is this.
Yeah.
And then there's those fans that are like, well, no, I think actually what the author meant to say was, and it's like, no,
well,
that's not it.
But even what I hate is from the author's perspective, where it's like fans do have these like things they enjoy discussing and interpreting on their own way, and then the author's just like Comic-Con. He's like, oh, actually, no, it means exactly this, and then that's it. And it's like it just killed the whole conversation, and it's just like it potentially ruined the enjoyment for maybe half the people. It just because not a lot of artists are like that. Most artists will allow things to kind of just be out there and whatever. But I do appreciate. I think that's why we could do this podcast, because King does work this series in a way that allows different interpretations and stuff. I mean, we can't talk about it in this episode, but think about how many times have we changed our perspectives on the end of this whole series through the course of this show. Because again, you can change your views on a lot, and just like this.
Oh, well, it's also with different views throughout the series. I mean, we've talked about different characters, and again, this isn't a discussion for the book club, but there's different things that have come and gone with both me and you in the life of just the show. Where it's when I started the show, I thought but after conversing, and especially with our fans are great at pointing things out that me and you. We have one way of thinking. We grew up together here in Utah. We have a very specific. But someone from halfway around the world has a different cultural mindset and goes, well, that means this to me. And it goes, oh, shit, maybe that's what Stephen King means.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it is a very interesting to see like the different ways of looking at it, and that you can change. That's what I love about this series, that you can change, and not be like ridiculed for having a different way of thinking.
That's what ultimately I think what's going to make the series last for 100 years. Like I think 100 years from now, somebody else will be talking about this series because it allows for that. If it's just super 2-dimensional and the author just came out at different Comic-Con events and went, no, here's the answer to the question people are debating. Like then it just becomes more shallow. And that's a shit that's just like going to fade in time.
If it stops the conversation, why? If we're not talking about it, then it fades.
Yeah, exactly. So the next note I have here is just after this. It says, then Roland was with her. His strong hands were on her shoulder, and although he didn't speak, she heard him. And then we got this in italics, so kind of the almost...
telepathy?
Yeah, telepathy, like psychic stuff. It says, don't fight. You can't win if you fight. You can only die. Sex is its weapon, Susannah, but it's also its weakness. Mm-hmm. So some telepathic wisdom from Roland there as he is trying to support her. Because I think that's the thing is like what Roland is doing in all this, in this moment, is kind of supporting both sides as they're struggling with mighty struggles, because we've been talking about it a lot in the last couple episodes. Eddie's struggling with his own self-doubt and stuff, and this is the ultimate moment where it's like this, he's got 2 lives on the line, Eddie does, so it's like if he fails, Jake's dead and Roland's done for, so it's like that.
Well, and also who knows what's going to happen with Susannah, with the demon.
Exactly,
so you got all of their lives on the line,
yeah,
because if the demon's finished with her, fuck, it might come from Eddie next. So
yeah,
all of them could die right here.
Exactly. So yeah, I that's what I think Roland is doing at this moment, is just kind of being the support for both of them as they're both struggling with pretty mighty struggles here. Mm-hmm. So what do you got next?
So right after that, she reached up with one hand as if to slap, and instead slid it around the nape of her demon rapist's neck. It was like cupping a palmful of solid smoke, and I love that description, like, because we've all done it with like smoke machines or like dry ice. Like what you have dry ice in like a punch or something. You run your hand through it, and you can almost feel it. And I love that cupping a palmful of solid smoke, not just smoke. But solid smoke. So I think of like even like thicker than what we've ever experienced.
And see, I just picture grabbing Smoke from Mortal Kombat by the neck and just shaking him.
You would. In the last little bit here, and did she feel it twitch backward, surprised at her caress? And that's always interesting to me, is when you have something like this that's like hungry or in this case horny.
Yeah.
if you meet it with enthusiasm, all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a minute. It's kind of like what it reminds me of is a charging bear. It's looking for you to run. It's looking for you to be afraid, because then you become prey and it wants to eat you.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. But when you stand tall, what's always the bear's reaction? Like, it pulls up short and it rears up, and a bear doesn't rear up until it feels threatened.
Yeah.
It's interesting that you see that. You see those videos of a bear charging someone, and if they know what they're doing, they stand their ground. You'll see the bear not just stop on all fours, it'll rear up and be like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
That's kind of what it reminds me of here. And again, great job by Stephen King using kind of like that animalistic instinct.
Yeah.
You know, like it's that thing, like you'll see predators do it. It's that all of a sudden they'll go on the defensive if it doesn't act like prey.
Yeah.
If they start chasing something and they think bears, cats, big cats.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't,
because ultimately it's like, wait, have the roles turned here?
Yeah. Shit. Am I gonna get eaten?
Yeah. What's going on here?
Even the top apex predators have that fear. I think the only one that doesn't really come to mind where you see a predator do that. Bears do it. Big cats do it. But you don't really see like crocs or alligators do that.
Yeah,
it's like
they don't give a fuck. They've been around for hundreds of millions of years.
Million years. Yeah, exactly.
It's like, I don't give a fuck.
I'm gonna eat or I'm not. It's one of the two. But I'm not getting eaten.
Yeah.
But to see, like, I've seen lions do it too. That they start chasing something and all of a sudden it turns back at them, and all of a sudden the lion's like, oh fuck, like skidding to a halt and then running like hell.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, it's like, all right, let me reevaluate.
Hold on a second.
And then like in between here, before my next note, she kind of grabs it around the neck and then kind of uses that as like leverage. And then it said, the note I have here, it's her saying, come on, she panted. You ain't gonna rape me. You ain't. You want to fuck me? I fuck you. I give you fucking like you never had before. Fuck you to death. She felt engorged with her terror, or with her tremble. Felt the demon try, at least momentarily, to draw back and regroup, which exactly is what we were just saying.
Yep.
Is kind of that predatory,
wait,
wait, hold on, what's going on here? You know, this isn't right. And then it's like, honey, she croaked. She squeezed her thighs inward, pinning it. To fun, just starting. So, again, it's this whole, you know, the whole thing's flipping on its head. And I don't think the demon quite understands, you know, it's probably not anything it's ever experienced before. I think the demon is probably a predator in a way that's never really had a challenge. You know, I think it's probably just, you know, raped or killed anything in its way.
And everything, yeah.
And so to have something not immediately fall into its normal, you know, prey category is
It's caught it off guard.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's usually what they tell you, right, with most predators, is your only hope is to catch it off guard somehow. Like, that's why with like certain bears and stuff, they tell you to make yourself big. You know, there's just certain things you got to do. You got to do something to like to you know, even if it only gives you a few seconds, like it's going to stop.
That's the difference between life and death when you're dealing with, you know, 1,000-pound grizzly bear.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But not polar bears. You're fucked if it's a polar bear. There's no scaring a polar bear.
Yeah, or like a moose.
Dude, I always forget how big moose are.
Yeah.
Like you see those videos online where they're like walking next to cars and like their bellies are higher than the roofs of cars. It's like, god damn.
It's like, it's just like the Mist.
Jesus Christ. Oh, that's where they got the idea for those monsters.
And then Mark in the chat says the fucking honey badger doesn't care either.
That's true. The honey badger. That's the other one. You got crocodiles, alligators, and the fucking honey badger.
Yeah. Yeah, because even like great whites and stuff, don't they tell you to punch them in the nose because it like disorients them?
The eyes or the gills and everything like that.
I thought it was like right in the nose because like there's something that it throws off with their like coordination.
They
or
have
something.
they have like their sensory things, but it's been kind of disproven that it's not actually that.
No, not that you could punch that fast in the water anyway. So.
No, but if you get them, if you get grabbed, you go for the eye or the gills. Those are the weak spots there. It'll fucking make you.
That's what I always say in in bar fights too. Go for the eyes and the gills
or the balls, if they have balls.
Okay, so next, or let's see.
Yeah, mine next.
You next?
Yeah, so to finish off this subchapter, it's actually going along the lines of what we were talking about with the demon. It cries out, "Let me go," a voice cried out in her mind, but at the same time she could feel the owner of the voice responding in spite of itself. "No way, sugar. You wanted it? Now you gonna get it." She thrust upward, holding on, concentrating fiercely on the freezing cold inside her. "I'm gonna melt that icicle, sugar, and when it's gone, what are you gonna do then?" Her hips rose and fell. She squeezed her thighs mercilessly together, closed her eyes, clawed more deeply into the unseen neck, and prayed that Eddie would be quick. She didn't know how long she could do this. So while we do get the sense like, fuck yeah, she's taking it to this bitch. Yeah, she's owning him. All of a sudden, it's like, oh shit, she's actually kind of in trouble.
Yeah, like ultimately, I think that's genius of King, because from a storyteller's perspective, like everything we've read up until that last line is almost diffusing the tension and drama a bit. So you have to have that last line to like make sure it's still there, right? It's like we've always talked about the whole Hitchcock idea of the bomb in the package. Like if the audience knows it's there, great. But if then suddenly the audience is told that the bomb like just malfunctioned, like, okay, the drama's all gone out of that scene now. Yeah. So you've got to do something to, so I do love that from the perspective like of King, where it's just like, okay, cool. Like just showing that shows that, cool, she may be even like outwardly commanding the situation, but it's like internally, no, there's still trouble here.
And this goes back to the conversations we've had before in roundtables, and there's no spoilers here, is that's something that would be hard to put into film.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That's something that we've talked about before with books.
Yeah.
This is what King writes.
It would have to
so good.
It would have to be hammy. Like it would almost have to be like dialogue, but then it'd be like, well, wait, wouldn't the demon hear that? Like it would just there's almost no way to portray that.
You could do the telepathy with Roland, maybe.
Yeah, you'd have to do something like that. But again, that's pretty cheesy. Like ultimately,
it's like, very cheesy. And we've seen movies do it, and some have been lucky to pull it off. Some have not.
Yeah, not really. Yeah, exactly. Books are 3-dimensional. Films are 2-dimensional. So you just lose a dimension. That's it. So moving on to subchapter 29. Starting right off here, the problem, Jake thought, was simple. Somewhere in this dank, terrible place was a locked door, the right door. All he had to do was find it, but it was hard, because he could feel the presence of the house gathering. The sound of those dissonant, gabbling voices was beginning to merge into one sound, a low, grating whisper, and it was approaching. So, yeah, I know. When I read that, almost every time I read that, it just gives me chills. Like, it's just like...
And the best part is for audio listeners or the people here on YouTube with us, the low grating whisper is the end of a paragraph, and then just a one-line little paragraph after that, and it was approaching.
Yeah.
Like, to put it separate, not at the end of that paragraph,
it makes it stand
out. It
out.
makes it so much worse, doesn't it? Just like, it's like 2 degrees worse. Like, I don't know why moving it from the end of that previous paragraph down here by itself does it, but it does.
And that's the way the Data line was about never having been raped. Yeah. Until now was its own paragraph.
Well, it was. You're right.
So yeah, agreed. That's definitely, and it does. It makes it stand out more. It's like a way of almost underlining that line
without underlining
it.
Right.
Is just having on its own. Definitely a good execution there. But yeah, I just love that, because again, we got to remember, where we left off with Jake is that there's kind of a terror involved here.
Yeah.
And just in the mansion on its own, and then now you say that there's like these voices that are merging together into a grating whisper, and then it's approaching. So like suddenly it's like, now it's just not just this weird fear of like a spooky house. Now it's like, what's the reason for that fear? And that's starting to like
here's
together.
Why it's spooky.
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost worse sometimes when you explain why something is scary than just the dark scared him. Well, why did the dark scare him? Because when he was 5, he was chased through the woods by that makes it 100 times worse as a reader.
Yeah.
King's great at doing that to you.
And that's what I was thinking, is like the fact that it is just this like disembodied voice that's approaching, that makes it scary. Because like if it was just like, then a mummy came lurching from the darkness, it's like, okay, like there's some fear, but I don't think we would be scared of it.
It's the unknown.
Like Jake would be scared, but like I don't think we as readers would have like I get chills when I read that line, and it was approaching. Like that just gives you the heebie-jeebies, because again, then any of us, whatever fear we have, we could put into that.
It's you feel when you're left to fill in the blank, you do what's absolute worst for you.
Yeah, exactly. So, well done for Mr. King there. What do you got next?
As always. So he's looking through different places, and he comes across the kitchen, and something fell into his hair with a flabby thump. I love that, flabby thump. Jake screamed in surprise, reached for it, and grasped something that felt like a soft, bristle-covered rubber ball. He pulled it free and saw it was a spider. Its bloated body the color of a fresh bruise. So black?
Yeah,
right?
I think like blackish, grayish, purple.
I wanted to ask you about that. Like, what color did you think of? I think of like just like pitch black, like
no,
like water bottle.
To
black.
me, it's like a blackish purple, maybe with some gray.
See, I always think that's the color of like a healing bruise, isn't it? Like it starts to go like grayish yellow.
No, because when it's initially like a bruise, just internal bleeding, and it's just the blood there. So it's just, I think, I think it just gets like. In some cases, like it just starts to get like almost lighter or more dissipated as it goes. I think when it's fresh, it's just like really dark.
Yeah. Like I always just picture like pure black.
But I still picture purple, like a purplish. Now that it's like bright purple, like the Joker. No. I'm talking like a dark, like almost black with like a purple hue,
like violet, like that darker purple.
Yeah. I don't know.
Tad's one of those guys that doesn't understand the difference between sky blue and navy blue.
Grab a 12-pack of Crayolas. That's all the colors there are. Everything else is fucking invented by the paint industry. So... And I'm being gracious with giving him a 12-pack. You could probably go with a 10 or a 5-pack with the basic Crayola. Like, what is that little tiny one they give it like 6-pack?
Yeah,
that you give out like they'll give out like Denny's with like the placemats.
They give out 3 crayons at Denny's now.
Oh yeah. When we were kids, I think it was like 6. Like,
it was like a 6-pack.
Yeah, but I'll give him a little bit and just give him 12. But like that, what's that little like 50-cent one that has like 2 rows? Is it 2 rows of 6? Like that's all the colors that exist. Everything else is just the big paint cartels inventing colors.
Tad's a basic bitch when it comes to colors. So, but no, that's so like a darker purple and everything is okay.
Yeah,
I wanted to see what you thought there with that.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Its eyes regarded him with stupid malevolence. I've never thought that I would ever think about holding a spider long enough that I can look at its eyes.
Yeah,
I can tell you right now, if I reached up and touched spider, I don't grab.
You brush.
I brush. Me and my wife had this conversation just a couple of weeks ago. She's like, yeah, I don't think... I'm like, have you ever thought, like, you've never held a spider? She's like, yeah, like, I've gotten spiders on me. I'm like, no, but you don't hold them. You don't grab them and throw them off. You don't grab and throw. You, oh, God, get the fuck off me.
Yeah. Unless it's a tarantula. Then you hold it and pet it.
You would.
They're good pets.
Are they?
Yeah, they're fun.
I don't know about that.
They like to crawl on you, and they'll find your heart and then nestle on it.
They nestle on the heart?
Yeah. So, and the feel of them when they crawl on you, like you can almost like feel like it almost feels like Velcro on your skin. Like you could feel it sticking.
Sticks?
Yeah, it's like a little hook type thing, and you can like feel it. But yeah, they're fun little pets.
Okay. To each their own, Jake threw it against the wall. It broke open and splattered there, legs twitching feebly. Another one dropped onto his neck. Jake felt a sudden, painful bite just below the place where his hair stopped. Oh, I'm on the wrong... Turn the page. There we go. He ran backward into the hall, tripping over the fallen banister, fell heavily, and felt the spider pop its innards. I got to pause real fast. Kudos for Stephen King using the word innards.
That's a good one.
Wet, feverish, and slippery, slid between his shoulder blades like warm egg yolk.
I was hoping you would recoil at that. There's
a reason. One. There's a reason this one's my note is because that's. I've had egg yolks. I've had an egg smashed on my head and everything. It's cold. It was even like kind of like an oozy. But to think of it as like a warm one, like it's been microwaved or warmed up, that's just nasty. That's gross.
Yeah. And then we've got old Darth in the chat saying, hey guys, awesome to see you guys still chugging along the beam. Yes, indeed. I'm not sure by the name old Darth who you might be from. I'm guessing someone from the past there, but yeah, we're still chugging along here. And if we have met you under the handle of old Darth, I apologize for forgetting. That seems like a memorable name. But yeah, still definitely chugging along here. But yes, warm egg yolk. Gotta bring that back up before we move on because that's a great one.
Hashtag Tad is terrible. Perfect chance just to let it go, but you don't. You have to grab it and bring it back.
Gotta bring it back. Yeah, absolutely. So the next note I have here a little bit further down says Jake flailed to his feet, still screaming. He felt something inside of his mind, something that felt like a frayed rope starting to give way. He supposed it was his sanity, and that at that realization, Jake's considerable courage finally broke. He could bear this no longer, no matter what the stake. He bolted, meaning to flee if he still could, and realized too late that he had turned the wrong way and was running deeper into the mansion instead of back toward the porch. So what I love about this is like... and we're going to get more of it as we move on here, is we've talked about this before, is, well, we've talked about this on a roundtable at one point. Somebody brought up the whole idea of Tolkien influences in the Dark Tower, and I would actually say that like the fear that we see in this chapter, that like this section with Jake, whether it be this chapter exactly or another subchapter, that's all part of this scene. Is this feels very Ringwraith fear to me. This just like the fear that every character has when they're like approached or near a ringwraith is just something that is not super common in literature.
No.
There's like this like inherent fear that's just beyond reckoning almost. And I really think that this fear that Jake has throughout this whole mansion, because maybe not even this chapter, maybe there's another note later that I thought of this the same thing, but this comes to it too. Is it's just like Jake has literally been losing his mind, and he's given up his parents. He's doing a lot of crazy shit for being as young as he is, to go and find, what he needs to find. He knows what he needs to find is in this house, and in this moment, he's so scared he's running away from it, potentially forever. Like, I don't think if he got out the front door, I don't think he'd ever go back in.
No.
He would kill himself. He would let his mind split. He would never go back in this place. So just the fear that's here just feels maybe not the most overt as some of the other ones that we called out in the roundtable episode, where we talked about some of the very one-to-one equations from Lord of the Rings to the Dark Tower series. But I do, in my mind, this is maybe a little bit less overt, but it is one. Because this feels very Ringwraithy to me. I don't know if you've even thought about that, or if that makes sense to you in terms of if you see what I'm seeing. But it feels that kind of like almost supernatural fear that you don't, even in other King works, you don't see that kind of fear. Yeah. Like maybe Flag, but even Flag, I don't think it's this kind of same, like, just, I feel like this is even deeper than the fear that people have in Flag in the Stand.
I think the deepest one, the best comparison you're going to find is Pennywise. Yeah. Is that deep unseated fear of that irrational terror that you get when you come across a leper or a werewolf or anything like that, any of the shape-shifting that it does. Yeah. They project that themselves, so when it actually materializes into that, that's where it's just like, oh God, oh God, oh God. Yeah. Kind of thing. Yeah. So, in the chat, that's Lou from the Stephen King podcast.
Oh, okay.
To say hi.
See, it makes sense. I do actually think Old Darth does seem familiar now that I'm thinking about it. Yeah, that okay. That makes total sense. It's all coming together now. So yeah, good to see you, Lou. Definitely.
Thanks for dropping in.
Still chugging along here.
Choo choo.
As we can see on the screen here. Yeah. But yeah, no. So for me, I'll put this on the little list of Tolkien. Tributes.
I gotta be honest with you,
to me.
While I know that Stephen King, this is his magnum opus and everything like that, comparable to the Lord of the Rings series, I've honestly never actually like sat down and gone like, okay, well, how are they similar, and looked at individual ones. I've always just looked at it as its own. It's just one. It's just one of the. I know people have done it and people have brought it up. It's just one of those things that I just never thought to do. Never thought to sit down on a read through. Maybe my next read through I need to.
And I don't think I went on a normal read through. I think it's that we're doing it this kind of more systematic going through that allowed me to really reflect on. Because again, when I'm reading this, just normal reading, like I'm speeding through this because this is fucking intense. Like
it's one of those one of those parts where you just can't put it down.
No, like I even while doing the prep for this, I remembered having to like slow myself down because like I realized I was reading fast. Like it's like because you realize like there's a ticking clock a little bit. So it's like you want to read fast because you're kind of almost telling the characters to go faster. Yep. And I realized like, no, wait, Tad, slow down. You're doing prep for a show here. Like, and so I think I don't think I would ever really maybe grab that same thing because I don't think I would have that same kind of like focus on a smaller verse like this without doing these book clubs. But it is one that jumped out at me as like it felt very because I mean, how many characters in Lord of the Rings run into ring race, and every single one seemingly has similar reactions.
Terror.
Just absolute terror of like turn and run screaming. And I guess you're right, Pennywise is probably similar too.
I think that's the closest you're going to find in Stephen King's works, is that just the unimaginable fear that everyone seems to have with that.
Yeah. So I just had to throw it out there as a connection potentially to the Lord of the Rings. What do you got next?
He looked forward again and came to a sudden skidding halt. Ahead, a pair of French doors stood half open on the recessed tracks. Another hallway stretched beyond. At the end of the second corridor stood a closed door with a golden knob. Written across the door, or perhaps carved into it, were 2 words: "The Boy." Below the doorknob was a... Sorry, it's small. Is that an F-I-L-I? It's like jumbled together. Hold on. Filigree silver plate and a keyhole. I found it, Jake thought fiercely. I finally found it. That's it. That's the door. Sorry.
Okay.
It was like because it's so zoomed out for me, the F and the I were almost forming like a weird letter, like a foreign language. I'm like, what the hell is that?
Yeah, you'll have to look at. There is a setting for making your text bigger. Actually, I think it's the 2 A's on the top of your thing.
Yeah,
there.
the problem I have is that if I make it bigger, I lose. It's where I start having issues where it skips pages on me. Remember how we talked about that?
Yeah.
I actually had that happen at home while doing my prep today. It skipped from like page 338 to 341. I had to go down to the little bar at the bottom and manually put it to where I could read those 3 pages in between. It's
so weird.
I don't understand why it does it to me.
Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that's definitely good. I love the boy. Obviously brings up memories of the last book for us, with doors with names written on there, and obviously the boy fits with what we got going here. So definitely works. And what I love with this section too is he came ahead was a French door half opened, and then let's see, at the end of the corridor stood a closed door, and then is this the section where it says I found it? Yeah, or I found it. That's the door.
Yeah, I finally found it.
What I reflected on the first time reading this, I remember, was flashing back to earlier in this book when he's opening all the doors, and me as a reader, at first you kind of hope along with him, that like the door, whatever door he opens will actually be the right one. But then after a second, you realize like, oh, this is just King being a dick. Yeah. So none of them are going to be real. So then you just kind of like watch him and like pity, you just pity him a bit.
Jake, come on, man.
But like, I guess like when I finally got to this moment, it's like, it was almost like a weird revelation where it's like, oh, of course, like, the door is going to have some pomp and circumstance. It's not just going to be, the bathroom door at his house or the coat closet in his class. It's not just going to be, it's got to be more than that. And it's not that it has to be this grand Wizard of Oz type thing. It has to, like, there would be a knowledge from him, and I guess so. I it's hard to explain what I'm saying. I guess ultimately there was almost a revelation for me where it's like once I saw it and realized, like, he realizes instantly, he knows that that's the door. It made me almost retroactively think of those moments that I was hoping that they would be the right door, and realize like, okay, Tad, you were wrong to hope there. Like that couldn't have been the door. That would have been.
You should have known better.
That would have been shitty if that were the actual door.
Yeah.
Like this, that wouldn't have worked. It would have just been so like, what? So I just remember that moment where it's like, okay, cool, finally. Because again, it doesn't just sneak up on you. It's not like, oh my god, it was the coat closet. No, it's like, oh yeah, he's in this fucking monstrous house, and he looks down this hallway and there's the fucking door. So it's just great. It's just well written, and it just kind of made me like almost like retroactively realize like, Tad, you were a fool to believe those doors.
I know, right?
Earlier. So
yeah,
I remember that from the first time reading it. And then a little bit further down here it says, because the walls are starting to shudder and the wallpaper with elves and stuff on it. Then it says the plaster bulged forward in a pregnant curve. From beneath it, Jake could hear a dry snapping sound as the lathing broke and arranging itself into some new, as of yet hidden shape. And still the sound increased, only it was no longer precisely a groan. Now it sounded like a snarl. So that's for you, Peter.
Not a fan of beasties.
He stared, hypnotized, unable to pull his eyes away. So I immediately thought of you with a snarl, because anything snarling, I think, falls into your beast category for the most part. Like, rarely somebody will throw like snarling onto like a person, like when they're in almost an animalistic rage. Even if they're not like being possessed, they just like, they're so possessed by anger or something. But like, usually snarl is going to go along with a beast. So I certainly thought of you with that there.
Yeah, good call. Definitely.
And I was going to ask you, so this registers as beastie when you see like a house starting to like form into something else and it snarls. Like, does that
not beastie but monstery, and monsters are still in the category.
Okay.
Like, basically it's something that's trying to eat me.
Yeah.
That falls into the category of beast, whether it's actual animal or not. There are some like spirit creatures that fit into my fear as well, as if they're trying to eat me, basically is what it comes down to. Is if they're going to have a Peter snack, is is a no for me. If they want to eat Peter as a snack, that's where I'm out.
That's where you draw the line.
That's where I draw the line. That's it.
All right.
Cannibals.
I was about to say, does Hannibal fit in there?
No, because I'm not rude. I'm not rude to him. I know better.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely makes you think. It's like, oh, let me make sure I'm, nice to strangers on the street.
I'm very nice to strangers on the street. Like I try not to be a dick. Cut me off in traffic, yeah, I'll flip you off. But I'm the kind of guy. I did it today. You're trying to take a selfie with someone, and it's a little too close to get the full effect. I'll offer to take that picture for you.
Yeah,
I'm a nice guy. Hannibal would not eat me.
What do you got next?
Suddenly, Jake realized he was looking at a huge plastic face that was pushing itself out of the wall. And I got to stop there because you know what I'm thinking about. Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
That's instantly what my mind goes to is Freddy Krueger.
This felt very Freddy to me. Yep. Just as one that was raised by horror icons. Yep. It definitely felt Freddy-ish to me because it just, nobody has the same kind of large theatrical things like this than Freddy.
And Freddy specifically actually has a scene where he comes out of a wall, very much like this.
Yeah,
it's like stretched like it's rubber almost.
Yeah,
plastic.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking.
Yeah,
of
there. That specifically is what's coming to my mind.
Yeah.
It was like looking at someone who was walking headfirst into a wet sheet. Thank you, Stephen King, for describing it even better than I could.
Yeah, that's the Freddy that you're talking about.
There was a long snap as a chunk of broken lath tore free of the rippling wall. It became the jagged pupil of one eye. Below it, the wall writhed into a snarling mouth. Again, snarling, not a fan. Filled with jagged teeth. That's a no-no. Jake could see fragments of wallpaper clinging to its lips and gums. I'm not a fan of mouths, maws, teeth, gnashing. Not a fan. Nope, this is not good.
And now we're certainly seeing this that first cover that we have on screen. We've had these 3 covers, the 3 variant covers I was able to find for this book.
Yeah.
Basically had these on screen for, what are we on, 12 episodes? So we had it on there for 11 episodes now. We still don't have a whole lot of comprehension of the train. We've seen Charlie the Choo Choo, the book.
Yep.
But that's it. But now we're seeing, basically, it looks like what is on that first cover there.
There's even a door with Jake hanging from it. So.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yes, indeed. So, gotta love that. As we move on a little bit further, Jake's paralysis broke. He turned and lunged towards the French doors and pelted down the second length of hallway with his pack bouncing and his right hand groping for the key in his pocket. His heart was a runaway factory machine in his chest. So definitely, because again, he just froze as all this was happening. So finally have that moment, that happens in movies and stuff too, where people are just like stunned, or whatever. And then finally,
fucking run! That's all you hear people screaming in the theater.
Yeah,
move, you idiot!
Yeah, and then finally, and I think the people that really get mad at that stuff are people that have never been in a situation where they've actually been frozen by fear. Because if you don't have any comprehension of that, like, it doesn't make sense to you. But it's like, hope that you live the rest of your life, if you're that person, without ever actually experiencing that. Because if you do, then you'll understand those moments in movies. But at the same time, your life will be much worse off for having to have experienced that. Because it takes a lot usually to put someone in that kind of state.
Yeah, and it happens actually a lot when you watch videos online of like accidents and stuff. You will see people just like deer in the headlights freeze.
Yeah.
I found that it's funny, this actually came up about a year or so ago with me and my wife, is that, we're not the type of people that yell at movies. We make comments, we talk to each other when we're watching a movie at home. I've found that I'm not one that yells at them like, move, stupid, or something like that. I'm encouraged. Come on, dude. Come on. You can do it. Jake, go. Go. I'm like that encouraging, pep talky kind of guy.
Yeah.
Fucking move. Come on. Go.
Yeah, and definitely you'd want to move at this point.
Yeah, there's a beast.
And this kind of almost reminds me too about Terminator 2. Like, T-1000 gets frozen and shot away, and they all just stand there for like 5 more minutes waiting for like him to
watching it
to melt together. And it's like he starts to like come out of that pool before they start running. It's like, if you would have ran immediately after shooting him,
they could have found a way out on the other side of the plant, got into someone's car.
He would have been
in the next county by the time he reformed.
You would have been in Oregon by the time he reformed. But no, you had to just sit there.
It is Southern California, right?
Yeah.
Because they go down to Mexico at one point.
Yeah. They cross the border. So, yeah. So what do you got next here?
Is it me or is it you?
I just did, it's you.
Okay. Right at the end of the subchapter. Oh, that's right. Yeah, because he's reaching for the key, running down.
Yeah.
Jake's hand closed on the key as he brought it out. One of the notches caught in the pocket. His fingers wet with sweat slipped. The key fell to the floor, bounced, dropped through a crack between two warped boards, and disappeared. King, why you gotta fuck with this kid? Come on.
Yeah, as we've said multiple times in this book club, King's a dick.
Right?
And no, I don't know if there's a character that he's a dick to as much as poor little Jake here. Throughout this whole book, Jake's just been getting shit on like crazy. And yeah, this is just one of those where it's like bad to worse, right? Like, and this is one of those things I kind of forget about as I read. Like when I get to this moment, I always forget that like there's certain elements of this whole section we're doing here, small things that I tend to forget in the overall look of things, like I would tell you certain elements of this whole section, but there's a couple things, and this is one of them that I would plumb forget for the most part. Like if you would have asked me a month ago, like, give me some of the moments, we could have sat here for 3 hours before I ever remembered that he dropped the key. I don't. It's one of those things that doesn't stick with me. So it's usually a surprise to me every time. I'm like, God damn it, what?
It's funny. You kind of sparked something in my head with what you were saying earlier about rushing through this part, is that there are 3 or 4 parts distinctly in The Dark Tower that I have the same thing where I got to slow down.
Yeah.
And everything. One of my favorite book, you know what part I'm talking about with that is that book. But there's also other books that it happens with as well, is where you got to slow down. And I found that those parts where you don't slow down, where you always try to speed through because it's just so good. It's so much going on. It's so intense.
That's when you drop things.
That's where you drop things. That's where you don't remember things.
Yeah.
And everything. I'm actually same thing. I'm going through the Harry Potter series again, and I'm at one of those parts right now.
Yeah.
Literally listening to it on the drive over here, and I'm like, oh fuck, I forgot about that part.
Yeah.
Because it is one of those parts that I'm always like, oh shit, this is going on. Let's go.
I think the only one I probably don't have that with is The Stand, and that's just because of the repetition I've had with it.
You've read it every single year.
Yeah, I read it every year, and I don't know what my count is. I'm sure it's well over like, probably in the realm of 15 to 20 would be my guess. So that one's probably one of the only ones that like I don't have any elements that I forget about, just because reading it once a year, and it's just but no other book has that same kind of repetition for me. So
see, I think it's pretty much that way for me with it, except for like 4 parts.
Yeah,
those 4 parts I just get oh fuck yeah, here we go. you know?
Yeah, the whole eyeball thing is one that I used to forget, but then it was actually in leading into one of the movies, we were suspicious that might actually be in the movie, and for some reason that solidified it in my head that I was just like, the leech eyeball thing.
Leech eyeball.
Yeah, not because there's other eyeball things I guess you could think of there. Yeah,
you're talking It here, right?
Yeah, in It. So like that's one of those things I always forgot, and then it would just like absolutely shock me. But then I remember in the prep for one of the movies where we were just like, oh my god, are they actually going to do this scene? And for some reason that just cemented it in my head to where now I don't forget about it anymore. Yep. So let's jump on over to subchapter 30. And this is back on the other side. He's in trouble. Susannah heard Eddie shout, but the sound of his voice was distant. She had plenty of trouble herself, but she thought she might be doing okay just the same. So, kind of like that, because I guess in this way, you're basically in this subchapter, you're in Susannah's point of view. So not only are we now flipping subchapters to flip sides of the world, but in some of these cases, like this whole subchapter, now that I'm looking it over, it's all Susannah.
Yeah.
So like the fact that Eddie's seeing that she's in trouble, or he's in trouble, and that Jake's in trouble, we're hearing that line from Susannah's perspective.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. I like that. And ultimately the fact that, again, it shows us that she's in a lot of trouble, but at the same time, she's getting the sense that maybe she's all right. And so again, doesn't take the full drama away, but it at least almost like pats us on the head where it's like, don't worry too much. Like, she maybe feels like some control over it. So,
and speaking of control, that's actually this next note covers that. She hadn't melted exactly, but she had changed it. The thing inside her was certainly giving her no pleasure, but at least the terrible pain had subsided, and it was no longer cold. It was trapped, unable to disengage. Nor was she holding it in with her body exactly. Roland had said sex was its weakness as well as its weapon. And he had been right, as usual. I love that, as usual. Roland was right. It had taken her, but she had also taken it. And now it was as if each of them had a finger stuck in one of those fiendish Chinese tubes where yanking only sticks you tighter. So it kind of shows like, okay, so she is going through a tough time, but it's not just her going through it, it's also the demon as well.
Now it's kind of a two-way street on that. And I do love those Chinese finger traps. Those are I always loved having those as a kid. Those are fun little toys.
Did you ever like just try to see if you were strong enough to break one?
Not really.
I think I did once as a teenager, and I found out I was not. It was a really well-made one.
I was going to say, I mean, they're like weaved and stuff, so there's going to be way more strength to them than they would be if they were just straight like paper, or cardboard, or whatever. So,
and I got like a legit, not one from like like the Penny Arcade or something like that. Like we have here. I got like a legit one that someone had from somewhere where there was like a Chinatown, like San Francisco, New York kind of place. And they're like, yeah, this is like a legit one. I'm like, they're like, here, you can have it. And I took it, and I was playing with it later at home, and I'm like, can I just like, Hulk rip it open?
Yeah.
No, I could not.
No, you can't.
I could not. The worst part is that she's right. As it gets tighter, it gets a lot harder to get off at that point. Even like when you do the trick where you like, push the other way and everything, it was still very hard to get off. I had lines on my fingers and everything. I was like, I ain't fucking with one of those again. Mm-mm.
Well, I'm glad I never tried it then. Thanks for doing it for me.
You're welcome. That's what I'm here for, is to try stupid shit.
Even in advance of meeting me, you were hurting yourself to then inform me later, so I don't have to do it. So then a little bit further down here at the end of the subchapter, it says, it wiggled and thrusted and convulsed within her, screaming to be let go at the same time, but at the same time used her body with a greedy, helpless intensity, but she would not let it go free. And what's going to happen when I finally do let it go, she wondered desperately. What's it going to do to pay me back? She didn't know. So again, King adding more drama to it, where it's just like, cool, like, it's you kind of get a sense of like relief, like, okay, she's got some kind of control over it. It's not all just it, with its will. But then at the same time, then you bring up that whole, because I don't think I had thought about it at that point up until she brought it up, where it's like, wait, what's going to happen when she does release it? What's it going to do? I didn't think about that. So then she put that thought in my head, and I'm like, damn it.
Yep.
That makes it worse. So let's go ahead and jump over to subchapter 31.
Yep. Right at the start here, the rain was falling in sheets, threatening to turn the circle within the stones into a sea of mud. Hold something over the door, Eddie shouted. Don't let the rain wash it out.
Yeah. Is that the end of your note? Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I see. I didn't. Yeah, okay. So I love that because again, you're adding more to it. We already had the rain, but I will admit I forgot about the rain as I read through this. So this is where it kind of brings it back. And then the fact you start to think about the fact that Eddie's trying to draw a door in the dirt and mud, and if it starts to come down in sheets, like, whatever you do is going to get destroyed. So that's obviously where Eddie's bringing it up. So it's like, now, just like you're bringing up, making it worse with Susannah up there, now you make it worse with Eddie, where it's like, okay, his job's now harder. Not to mention that if you don't do something, like, everything he's doing is going to get fucked because this rain is just coming down.
Yeah.
And you've seen that. We've been through it before. You have those torrential rains, and no matter what, like, this just washes everything away. Especially if you had something written in dirt or something, you may as well draw chalk on a sidewalk and have it rain
and see if it lasts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then the next little bit here says, Roland snatched a glance at Susannah and saw that she was still struggling with the demon. Her eyes were half shut, her mouth pulled down into a harsh grimace. He could not see or hear the demon, but he could sense its angry, frightened thrashing. Let's see. And then Eddie turned his streaming face toward him. Did you hear me? He shouted. Get something over the goddamn door and do it now. What I love about this is such a reversal, because it's like ultimately Roland is the one that actually is caring about Susannah right now. Mm-hmm. Eddie is like not even thinking about her.
Yeah.
Like he did, and she told him not to worry about it.
Yeah.
But now he's so fixated on what he's doing that it's like Roland, and it's weird to say this, but Roland cares more about someone than Eddie does. Like, especially that it's Susannah, right? It's like his wife, but it's like in this moment, Roland is actually taking the time to actually look over Susannah to see, like, I need to make sure I'm not needed here before I help you, Eddie. Like, you know, like because again, he's the support character, and now he's being pulled another way. And just, I guess I find it interesting because not only is it funny because Eddie's the one that's like
taking charge.
It's like you've reversed the roles a little bit, but also I do kind of like the fact that Roland is actually kind of showing some compassion a bit here. Yeah. Like, it may be, you know, pragmatic compassion, of more of like, I need to make sure that this is going okay. But the fact that he doesn't immediately just jump to help Eddie, I don't know. To me, it feels kind of like a warm and fuzzy a little bit for Roland, and we don't really get that with Roland. So I do actually appreciate the fact that we got that little moment there.
Yeah, you're not wrong, but I also wanted to point out that it's kind of interesting that, you know, Roland is Roland, and through everything that we've seen so far, through 2 and however much percent we're through book 3,
45. This
is one of the very few times that you see where Roland is not doing anything really.
Yeah,
like he's there holding Susannah. That's about it right now.
Yeah. He's definitely playing a support role.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to see that. Like, the only reason that Susannah had to take the shot with Shardik is because she had the gun.
Yeah.
You know, Eddie had one gun, she had the other. Roland didn't have a gun.
Yeah. Then the only other time that he's really been kind of not the one taking charge is when he was basically almost dead.
Yeah, he was like in and out with the shuffle.
Yeah, and just like the poisoning, like when he has to get carried down the beach and stuff. Like,
right.
He's basically, he may as well be a dummy.
It takes a lot to take Roland out of that. Okay, I'm going to do something role. And here we see Eddie doing something. We see Susannah doing something. We see Jake doing something. But Roland's just kind of like, okay. And then even here with my next note.
Did you, in your mind, though, when this is happening, did you have that thought early on reading this? Like the fact that Roland was kind of inactive at this point? Or is that more than something you came to recently?
This read through.
Okay.
Yeah, this note, I actually had an original one, and then I expanded on it. And it's because Roland yanked one of their hides from his pack and held a corner in each hand. Then he stretched his arms out and leaned over Eddie, creating a makeshift tent. The tip of Eddie's homemade pencil was caked with mud. He wiped it across his arm, leaving a smear the color of bitter chocolate. Then wrapped his fist around the stick again and bent over his drawing. So we have Susannah fighting a demon.
Yeah.
We have Jake trying to get the key, he just dropped the key, going to the door that's going to be on the other side of Eddie's door that he's drawing, and Roland's holding the umbrella.
Yeah.
I mean, he's holding up a hide, and he's just kind of standing over Eddie, you know, holding it up.
Yeah.
That's what the hero of our story is currently doing.
Yeah.
Like, it's just interesting to think, like, you think back to, like, the Avengers, you know, like a big, you know, superhero thing. Just imagine if Iron Man was, you know, okay, yep, step this way. Okay, out the building. Okay, yep, ma'am, you too. All right, sir, you're next. All right.
Yeah.
And that's all he's doing. You know, he's doing what Captain America told the cops to do. That's all of a sudden Iron Man lands and starts doing that. That's where it's just kind of like, isn't there more you could be doing right now, bud? You know, like, couldn't you be contributing in some way?
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's kind of interesting to see that it's Jake, it's Eddie, and it's Susannah.
Yeah.
It's those three doing something.
I remember the first time reading it kind of being like wondering like what's Roland's role in this, because like I just thought to myself like he is the most capable, and it just seemed like weird that he was like inactive, and I'm like he's got to be here for something, because I was like, even with the demon and stuff, like, is there something Roland can do here? I remember thinking that the first time where I'm like, because literally you've got like this fucking badass with you,
right?
And like right now he is
use him.
Kind of not being used, and I remember being frustrated by that, because I was just like, and I remember like trying to think to myself, what's he going to do that's going to break this out a little bit? Like he's gonna be the one that in some way breaks this, like,
to turn the
kind
tide.
Of stalemate, because he's Roland. Like, so in my mind, I remember having that thought when I first read it. So that's why I was curious when you had that thought of like Roland's in action, because I remember the first time just being like, okay, because up to this point, like, you know, when you're clearing out Balazar's place and stuff, sure, Eddie had a spot in the whole thing, and he did his part, but it's like Roland
did a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yeah, he carried the heavy lifting there, and then throughout in general, he's the fucking badass. So I was kind of like waiting for him to do it, and since he hadn't up to this point, I remember thinking like, "Okay, dude, what are you doing?
Let's go."
And ultimately, I don't blame him heavily. It was more of just like, what's he going to do, or like, when's King going to give him an opportunity to do something? Because he's obviously got to have some kind of part. Because right now he feels kind of whatever. And then we get to this moment where again he said he basically becomes a tent Spike.
Yeah, he's the guy holding an umbrella.
Yeah.
So the rest of my note, it was not exactly the same size the door on Jake's side of the barrier. The ratio was perhaps 0.75 to 1. but it would be big enough for Jake to come through if the keys worked. If he even has a key, isn't that what you mean? He asked himself. Suppose he's dropped it, or that the house made him drop it. It's like,
yeah.
How the fuck did Eddie know?
The thing is not only that, but that first portion where, if the keys worked is like, I had completely forgotten about the whole idea of the carved key and like, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? Like that was a big stressor in our last book club, which, if you're reading it normally, like it's probably a few minutes before, but you kind of lose sight of it because of so much that's going on that it's like, this is almost a kind of a brilliant way for King to remind you like, hey, remember, there's a key that may or may not work here. And then you're just like, oh, fuck. Because it adds more stress to it. It just like, he's got this thing and he's just turning the pressure up. He's turning the knob up on the pressure with everything, it seems. So, and then we don't necessarily have it highlighted, but then it says he draws something here down. And I actually grabbed this screen grab to put on the screen here.
There we go.
But it's basically representing the doorknob and then a familiar shape of a keyhole underneath it. And then so that this is kind of showing the picture. So it's kind of cool. So again, he's just drawing this all in the mud. So this is all just like two-dimensional in the dirt, in the mud. But in ways, like, wasn't there, this is probably, I don't know about previous, but this definitely seems like the kind of the coup de grace, right? That makes it a door.
Yeah.
Like up until this point, you got a rectangle
in the dirt.
Whatever. It's like, once you put this on there, though, it's like when you're a kid drawing with crayons, it's like there's a point when you have a rectangle, and it's like, that's nothing but a rectangle. But then when you put that little circle there, it's like, oh, now it's a door.
Yeah,
like,
there it is.
And if you want to do a keyhole, too. I was never that fancy. I just did the doorknob.
I couldn't do a keyhole. I'm not that talented when it comes to art.
Well, and I'm also not from the 1800s when a keyhole looked like that.
That's true.
Sometimes I would just put a jiggly line inside the doorknob, just because that's what I would see from a key, right? So, I did want to bring that up because I had that to share on the screen there. And then, let me see, I just lost my spot. Where are we at? 31. And then the next note here I've got, it's a little bit further down. It says, carefully, he wrote the boy across the top panel of the door with the tip of his stick. At the instant he finished the Y, the drawing changed. The circle of rain darkened earth he had drawn suddenly darkened even more and pushed up from the ground, becoming a dark, gleaming knob. And instead of brown, wet earth within the shape of the keyhole, he could see dim light. And I just love this because, like, I think I mentioned it, and it was book 2, I think, was I love the mechanics of things like this in sci-fi or fantasy. I love to know, how does Roland's doorway work in Eddie's head? Like, I love that, just the mechanics of it. It's super fascinating to me. And so for this, it's the same thing. It's just like, dude, the second he puts the boy, like, then it like 3D's up, the doorknob comes out, and it becomes a fucking door. Like,
not made of dirt, but of wood.
It's like, that's fucking cool, dude. I know it's like not that like crazy of a thing. It kind of is, because it's like magic and mysticism type stuff. But it's fucking cool because it's like, again, it's like the you're seeing the rules of the world play out, and I dig that shit. As a kid that grew up on sci-fi and stuff, I just love it because that's, I don't know, that's the extra kind of shit, right?
Yeah.
That's the kind of,
that's that world building stuff.
Yeah, and I'm an absolute 100% fanboy for that stuff. So I do love that, and this is just like a part 2 of that whole doorway on the beach, in terms of, like, not that it is a door, but there's the fact that it's like, suddenly it's now, again, he's seeing light coming through it too. So it's like, now it's not just that it's became a door, but you're seeing a light coming through it. So it's like, wait, light? Like, what happens if you look through there? So.
Exactly. And that's actually what happens next, is that Eddie bends down and looks through the keyhole. He saw a hallway. Jake was down on his hands and knees, tugging frantically at a board. Something was coming for him. Eddie could see it, but at the same time he could not. It was as if part of his brain refused, and it refuses in italics, to see it. As if seeing would lead to comprehension, and comprehension to madness. "Hurry up, Jake," he screamed into the keyhole. "For Christ's sakes, move it." Above the speaking ring, thunder ripped the sky like cannon fire, and the rain turned to hail.
So King just making it worse.
Just one more thing on top of everything else.
So one thing I got to point out here is King's been shitting on Jake a lot this last pretty much always. Let's not like limit it to this book, because King's been shitting on Jake from fucking the first second he showed up in this whole series in the first book.
Yep.
He has been absolutely shit on repeatedly. And what I want to point out here is Eddie's a grown ass man, and his mind is basically like blurring things, because like it says, if he saw it, it would lead to comprehension, and comprehension would lead to madness. So basically it's like, it's going to break your brain. And Jake's seeing it and looking at it. So it's just like, to me, it almost like it's not to like badmouth Eddie. It's more of to show the metal that is in Jake, that he's able to like handle it. Because again, I mentioned it earlier, I kind of feel it's almost like a ring wraithy type thing. And it's like, is there a point when someone can actually like maintain that fear with a ring wraith? And Jake's kind of doing it, whereas Eddie's mind's like, nope, not gonna let you even not gonna even let you see that.
You know what that reminds me of is that reminds me of it, because it's such a huge favorite of mine, is that adults go mad but kids don't.
Yeah,
that's what it's kind of thinking. What I kind of think about here is that Jake, being a kid, can handle it a little bit more. The imagination is still there, but Eddie, being more of an adult, is like you said, his brain's like, nope.
Yeah.
Nope. I'm going to shield that from your eyes. If I let you see that, you're going to fucking go insane.
Avert your eyes, oh Lord. Averting our eyes, oh Lord.
We're averting our eyes, oh Lord. Well, don't.
Oh yeah, so it's at least mentally averting Eddie's eyes.
Yeah,
I just wanted to give Jake a little bit of credit. You might be right. It might be more of the kids are more capable of handling the stuff, but it's for me, it's like Jake's in the house with that thing. Yeah. And and I just gotta give Jake some fucking props, because like I don't know if I'd be able to handle that.
I know
honest.
I wouldn't. I'm comfortable in my mental health to say, if I saw a house come together and start having like a mouth and teeth like it was trying to eat me, that's the point where I'm just like, all right, I wear a size 2X straitjacket. Let's go ahead and just get those boys in the nice white coats. Let's get this rig going.
Get this wrapped up here.
Yep, let's go.
Well, especially with your aversion to beasts.
I'm not a fan of beasts.
And this is very beasty.
It's very.
This is like giant house size beast, mansion size beast, which is even more terrifying to think about.
Not a fan.
So jumping over to subchapter 32, I almost said 23. Starting off right at the top here, it says, for a moment after the key fell, Jake only stood where he was, staring down at the narrow crack between the boards. Incredibly, he felt sleepy. That shouldn't have happened. And this is in italics. He thought, it's one thing too much. I can't go on with this. Not 1 minute, not one single second longer. I'm going to curl up against that door instead. I'm going to go to sleep right away, all at once. And when it grabs me and pulls me into its mouth, I'll never wake up. So really, this is like, I don't think this is a defeat as much as this is almost like that mental snap. Earlier it mentioned, it's like, it's like waiting for some kind of snap that would be the snap of his sanity. Like, not that it's his full sanity, but this is just, it's a break. Like there's a break there where it's just like, no, because like I don't read this as like defeatism. I read this as just like shutting down. His mind is just like, kind of like Eddie's mind just like went, nope, you're not going to see that. Jake's mind's just like, no, that's too much. That's too far, and like time to go to sleep.
There's a movie or show that does it. I can't remember what it is, where it's did you ever hear of the movie? I think it's called Daybreak. Is it Daybreak? With Sylvester Stallone, where it's the Lincoln Tunnel there's an accident, and then there's water leaking in, but both sides are blocked like a cave in. And so people are trapped inside the tunnel, but there's water leaking, so they have to figure out a way out. There's a character in that just sits down against the wall and just dies. Just like nope, this is as far as I've gone.
You see that in Titanic too.
Oh yeah,
There's certain people that just give up.
They're just like, this is as far as I've gone. I can't anymore. That's it. I'm done.
And sadly, that's actually not a fake thing. That actually just happened in China in the last like 6 months.
Did it really?
There was a viral video of people in a subway as it was filling up with water, and it went viral. Then like a few days later, I read that that viral video, everyone in there died.
Oh God!
Like it just filled up and killed everyone.
Jesus.
So like I'd much prefer it to just stay in the Sylvester Stallone movie, but unfortunately, like I said, I don't often seek those kind of things out, but it was just one of those things that kind of went viral, and it was just like, holy shit, this kind of like, look at this, and you're just like, I think in your mind you always just expect, it got sorted out.
Someone came to the rescue and got them out of there.
Although in the same time, when it's China,
fair point,
maybe not as much hope there. Unfortunately, there's not as much safety and care for things. But. Yeah. So what do you got? Let's see. Is that the end of my note, I think? And I'll never wake up?
Yes.
Okay. So then you got, what do you got next here?
Picking up right after that, then the thing coming out of the wall grunted, and when Jake looked up, the urge to give in vanished in a single stroke of terror. Now it was all the way out of the wall, a giant plaster head with one broken wooden eye and one reaching plaster hand. Chunks of lathing stood out in its skull in random hackles. like a child's drawing of hair. It saw Jake and opened its mouth, revealing jagged wooden teeth. It grunted again. Plaster dust drifted out of its yawning mouth like cigar smoke.
And I have a picture there, throw up on the screen.
You zoomed it in. Why?
Well, there's either that or there's even a more troubling one that I found. It's like, I don't know if it's an artist rendition of it, but it's just, for some reason, it's way creepier to me. I don't know if it's because the book cover one's just very familiar to me. I've seen it a lot over the years.
Oh, God.
But that one is just like, there's something really like, I'm trying to think, what is it like? Is it the Babadook? There's some like kind of that modern horror vibe that this feels very like, I don't know, maybe
Babadook, Sinister,
like,
Insidious kind of
Conjuring
stuff.
2 with like
Conjuring
was the Rickety Man, like that little like shadow thing. Yeah, like it feels very like that, and it's just creepy as fuck. So I wanted to share that on the screen there. But oh yeah, Alan's got it there. The Frighteners too, actually.
Oh yes,
That definitely can remind you of that as well. Then as it goes down here, this thing's coming at him. And my next note's a little bit further down. It says, Jake screamed breathlessly and began to wrench at the board again. It won't come, but the gunslinger's voice did. It's because he's obviously trying to pull the board up to try to get at the key.
Yeah.
But then Roland's voice enters his mind. I always think of this as the court special, where it's the mental voice of someone else. Because I do picture this as not like an actual mental connection with actual Roland. I think this is more of just like
the Roland of Jake's mind.
Yeah, because he's already heard that throughout this book a few times. And I think this is that in my mind, is how I perceive this. And it says the other one, Jake, try the other one. So, kind of one of those things when you're in the well, so to speak, the jaws of madness. Sometimes you're not thinking rationally.
Yeah.
And what better person for rationality than Roland? Because he's one that doesn't really have a lot of emotion. It's all rationality for him.
He is one cool cucumber.
So he would be the one. Yeah. So hey, try the other one. Because I could admit I'd probably do the same thing. Like if I was in that kind of like absolute terror,
if we'd have been able to unfreeze it all, that's the thing.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I said, I think that at that point, if I saw a monster forming out of the wall, like the house was becoming a monster, I think that's the point where I just go, all right, that's it.
Yeah.
That's the end. All right, then. Sayonara, folks.
Yeah, pretty much. So what do you got next here?
So right after Roland yells in Jake's head, try the other one, he let go of the board he had been yanking at, and grabbed the one on the other side of the crack. As he did, another voice spoke. He heard this one not in his head, but with his ears, and understood it was coming from the other side of the door. The door he had been looking for ever since the day he hadn't been run over in the street.
Did you?
Nope, had a page turn.
Oh, page turn, okay.
Hurry up, Jake, for Christ's sake, hurry up. When he yanked the other board, it came free so easily that he almost tumbled over backward. And I wanted to go to that point instead of just the going to the other board, because I picture yanking it, falling backwards into the maw.
Like in my mind, like if this were just like a horror movie and Jake was not an important character and I was like doing it, I would absolutely make that happen.
Falls back and just
nom. Yeah, it just gets eaten. It's just the perfect thing to do because it just would be unexpected and it would just, I don't know, yeah. But of course, this is a different circumstance. Jake's far too important for that. But I'm glad you said that though, because I did think the same thing. And it's like it says he almost tumbled over backward.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's definitely not the way you want to go. That's the wrong direction. So jumping over to subchapter 33. So this chapter, we don't have a lot of highlights on, but basically this one has a bunch of outsiders. So we got a couple women in an appliance shop across the street from the mansion. Mm-hmm. We've got a trio of boys on their way to Little League. And then we've got a delivery driver. And they're all reacting because there's basically a pretty loud noises. Like essentially, as you think about it, it's basically the mansion's pulling itself apart to create this monster. It's like physics, right? Like you can't create this giant beast without other things behind it being pulled away to create it. So it's like essentially this mansion's ripping itself apart. And we're seeing the reaction. We're seeing these people hearing it and then kind of reacting to it. I do appreciate it a little bit because it is showing it kind of gives us another perspective. Like it's one thing to see it from Jake's perspective. It's one thing to see it from Eddie's perspective looking through the keyhole. But now to see it from here kind of shows us the reality of it, that this isn't I guess it solidifies it a bit. Like, so this isn't just like a Haunting of Hill House where it's just a ghost thing. You know, this creature is not this ghost thing. Like, no, this is literally the mansion's pulling itself apart to create this. And in a way that almost ratchets up the tension a little bit more, because I think when I was reading this the first time, I did interpret this might be a monster, not or it might be a ghost. Not to say that made it less dangerous, because I think it's one of those things, if a ghost got you, it would still get you. But like when you start to see this, that the house is pulling itself apart from the outside, people are hearing it, and if one of them perceives it as an earthquake, so there's a lot of commotion. That almost makes it scarier for me, because it's like, okay, so now it wouldn't be just like some, vicious ghost teeth gnawing him up. Like, no, this would be like splintered boards and stuff that would be chewing him up. So you got that. And then the one highlight I do have in this section, it says the entire house seemed to be bowing inward. Boards splintered, jumped off its face and rained down into the yard. Dirty gray black waterfalls of slate shingles poured down from the eaves. There was an ear-splitting bang and a long zigzagging crack shot down the center of the mansion. The door disappeared into it, and the whole house began to swallow itself from the inside, from outside in. So again, yes, it makes total sense with what we're seeing from Jake's perspective. Although for me, it does remind me of The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror, with the haunted house, and it's like, you have a choice to either stop this and live with us or whatever. And he's like, let me think about it. And then it just like eats itself up and disappears. Like, just when the house starts to like eat it into its own self and like collapse into itself, like, I have to think of The Simpsons, because that's where I come from. So then jumping over to subchapter 34.
Yep. A hot, strange wind began to sigh down the hallway, blowing Jake's sweaty hair back from his brow as his fingers closed over the silver key. He now understood on some instinctive level that this place was and what was happening. The doorkeeper was not just in the house, it was the house. Every board, every shingle, every windowsill, every eave, and now it was pushing forward, becoming some crazy jumbled representation of its true shape as it did. It meant to catch him before he could use the key.
Yeah. And I'm trying to think in my mind, like, what other personifications of monsters do we have? Like, Haunting a Hill House comes to mind. The house itself is kind of the evil entity.
Amityville
Horror. Yeah, it's mostly haunted house stuff, but I guess this fits that, right? But yeah, this is certainly beyond the pale, though, because in those cases, like, it's some kind of creature. It's not like the actual house is manifesting physically into some kind of killing machine. It's just different, and in a way, like, this is way more terrifying in a lot of ways. Like, I'd almost love to see a version, even if it wasn't an actual Dark Tower adaptation, which I would love to see, but even just like a house that actually manifests physically against people, like, that's a terrifying thought. It's kind of like in one of the round tables we talked about, the idea of possessed machinery. And it's like, that's fucking terrifying, because you don't really see that very often, where, like, I guess Christine, but it's like, outside of that, you don't really see like machines.
Right,
because it's in book 1, isn't it? When Roland says something about machines could be possessed by demons or something.
Yes.
So it's like, that was the thing that sparked it for us, where it's like, dude, that's a fucking terrifying thought. And I think it's the same thing with a house, where it's like, not just a house where there's just like spooks and specters like floating around and like doing evil shit, which can be scary. But it's like, yeah, if your house is like physically coming after you, like, that's pretty fucking terrifying.
Yeah, what's more terrifying is there's a game out that I've started playing. It's called Phasmophobia. It's a multiplayer game where you're ghost investigators. You're going in to identify what type of ghost it is. So when you go into the house, the sound audio changes. So it goes from, ambient rain in the outside, everything. But when you walk in, all of a sudden it's like, do you know the difference when you put on noise canceling headphones and you turn the noise canceling on? It's like that.
It almost feels like sounds like a sucking sound,
like a seal. That happens, and it's like, okay, I'm in, but I'm in a ghost territory. There's a ghost. It's not, I'm in the ghost. That's the scary part about this house, is that you're in the house. And every single part of that house is going to be trying to kill you. That's the difference there between like what you're talking about, like a spook or a specter or a ghost. It's not that. It's, oh shit, I think of like, a big giant creature like from The Mist. Oh fuck! I just walked into the gullet of a beast. And now I have to fight it so it doesn't eat me. But I'm already inside of it. But there is one way to get out. If I go the specific way, I can get out.
One thing I can think of that kind of comes close to it is the tree in Poltergeist, of a actual manifestation of something that it's not just a ghost. Like that tree comes alive and tries to grab the kid, and like that. And again, that's one of the scariest parts of that movie.
It is.
So it's just like, I think some horror people need to get on that. I think like having this like kind of what this Dutch Hill thing is doing needs to be something we see in more movies, because that is way more terrifying than ghosts. And ghosts are fucking scary. I'm not putting light on them. You know, Haunting of Hill House. And that tall one floats into the little boy's room and then looks under the bed.
Yeah, not a fan.
That's something else. So the next note I have is a little bit further down. It says, Jake yanked his own hand out of the hole in the floor and saw it was covered with huge trundling beetles. He slapped it against the wall and knocked them off and cried out as the wall first opened and then tried to close around his wrist. So there's what you're talking about there.
Yeah.
He yanked his hand free just in time, whirled and jammed the silver key into the hole in the plate. The plaster man roared again, but its voice was momentarily drowned out by a harmonic shout which Jake recognized. He had heard it in the vacant lot, but it had been quiet then, perhaps dreaming. Now it was an unequivocal cry of triumph. That sense of certainty, overwhelming, inarguable, filled him again, and this time he felt sure that there would be no disappointment. He heard all the affirmation he needed in that voice. It was the voice of the rose. So again, maybe one of those moments I would kind of forget a little bit in all this nonsense, but kind of got that angelic choir of the rose coming back here in this moment of darkness.
Yeah.
So, that's I do like that. It's pretty cool. But like you said, you mentioned the whole idea of the whole house is trying to eat him. Not just the face. Like that does make it pretty scary.
And what you're talking about with making a horror film out of that, he smacks his arm against the wall to try to get the beetles off, and instantly the wall goes, nom.
Yep.
That's what I'm picturing. Is like, it's just like, okay, I'll eat you here, and it's just like, oh fuck, no, not a fan.
Yeah.
No.
And then Alan mentions Maximum Overdrive. Yeah, that's another one with like possessed machines. And again, it's fucking terrifying.
It is.
Just that whole idea. Because I don't know, like it almost makes it even worse. Because it's like you at least have the perception that like if it's Michael Myers, you could reason with him. I know you can't, but like you at least have that idea. He's a human, right?
Right.
But it's like when it's like just a fucking 18-wheeler or
a Terminator.
A Terminator. Yeah, it's just that's not.
There's no reasoning with that if it's programmed that way.
No, yeah, it's just a machine. So if that machine then is possessed by something, you are fucked. Or a vending machine. Just a little tease for Maximum Overdrive there. So let's see. Next up, you got the next note, I think.
You read my note. The Plaster Man. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't split those from mine.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the next one. Do you want me to take the next one then?
Yeah. Go ahead and take the next one. Yeah. Sorry.
That's okay.
I somehow
those worked really well together, so I can see why you just kept going.
Yeah. See, I always try to, if I have two notes next to each other, I always try to highlight them in different colors.
Yeah.
So I don't mess it up. And I thought I must have screwed that one up and somehow highlighted them both the same. I bet you it was a page split. Sometimes that happens and I'll forget, and then I'll do a page split. I'll just do, okay, blue. But then like when it reshuffles, it's like they're together and it's like, oh, it's one note.
Yeah.
So
the Jake turned the key and felt a sudden surge of power rush up his arm. He heard a heavy, muffled thump as the lock bolted inside withdrew. He seized the knob, turned it, and yanked the door open. It swung wide. Jake cried out in confused horror as he saw what lay behind. The doorway was blocked with earth. From top to bottom, from side to side, roots poked out like a bunch of wire. Worms, seeming as confused as Jake was himself, crawled hither and thither on the door-shaped pack of dirt. Some dived back into it, others only went on crawling about, as if wondering where the earth which had been below them a moment ago had gone. One dropped onto Jake's sneaker. The keyhole shape remained for a moment, shedding a spot of misty white light on Jake's shirt. Beyond it, so close, so out of reach, he could hear rain and a muffled boom of thunder across an open sky. Then the keyhole shape was also blotted out, and gigantic plastic fingers curled around Jake's lower leg.
I got the Freddy Krueger element going again.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's good stuff there. Again, the whole mechanics of it, because on Roland's side, where Eddie's at, the door's not open. So the door is there, but with it being closed, it's like on Jake's side, it's not like the other side of the door hasn't materialized.
Right.
So it's like all he's basically seeing is like underneath where Eddie was drawing, which is
what I always picture here is those hotel rooms with joining doors.
Yeah.
Where you have my door and your door, and
Yeah.
there's that space in between, and that space in between is filled with dirt.
Yeah.
That's what I'm picturing is that, and Jake can't get through to the other door because there is just solid dirt in his way.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's what I picture there.
And like to me, I picture it as almost like, I know it's like physical and not like whatever mystical order, but I almost think of it like portals. It's like one portal's open, but the other portal's not yet. So that portal's just kind of running into the closed side of the other portal, which in this case would just be dirt and worms and shit. So it's like Eddie needs to turn that key, and I think at that point it would become a door on both sides.
Yep.
And then the door would open, and it would be, you know,
a passage.
In my mind.
Yeah.
That's how I'm putting the mechanics together when I read this. Is like, okay, cool, that makes total sense. Like Eddie hasn't done his side yet. So yeah, that's what you're going to see. So, but I do love it. World building, mechanics, absolutely love it. So jumping over to 35.
I got the first note here. The gunslinger grabbed her beneath the arms and dragged her as gently and carefully as he could across to where Eddie crouched. Let it go when I tell you, Susannah, Roland shouted. Do you understand? When I tell you. So, okay. So
Roland's got a plan.
Roland's doing something.
And
okay,
see, again, I remember the first time reading this, and I was just like, come on, Roland, what the fuck? So, like, that's the moment where I'm like, okay.
Here we go. Here we go.
Roland's got something going here. That's good, because so far he's been mostly inactive. He's been playing Umbrella. So, So then the next one here is Eddie saw and heard none of this. He heard only Jake screaming faintly on the other side of the door. The time had come to use the key. He pulled it out of his shirt and slid into the keyhole he had drawn. He tried to turn it. The key would not turn, not so much as a millimeter. Eddie lifted his face to the pelting hail, which again, reminder that it is hail now.
Yeah.
That's
ow.
Yeah, that would hurt, even if it's smaller hail. Oblivious to the ice balls, which struck his forehead and cheeks and lips, leaving welts and red blotches.
Again.
So,
ow.
At least it's not bleeding or knocking him unconscious, but it still fucking hurts. No, he howled. Oh, God, please, no. So this is kind of that darkest moment for Eddie, right? This is what he feared, is failing at this moment, and it looks like he's failing. But there was no answer from God, only another crash of thunder and a streak of lightning across the sky, now filled with racing clouds. So, kind of as much as King's been shitting on Jake, I think he's kind of been hitting Eddie pretty hard too. And this is kind of Eddie's deepest fear. This is the kind of stuff that, you know, like a lot of his neuroses go to is this kind of failure. And here he is dealing with this failure. And that's pretty dark.
Yeah.
that's pretty brutal. So, definitely makes your heart race a little bit and makes you read faster if you're reading. You're just like, what? Because you expect it to work, right?
Yeah.
In that moment, like you just expect it to work, and so the fact that it doesn't, you're just like, you're almost as shocked as he is, and you feel him when he's like screaming, because it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Exactly.
Over to subchapter 36.
Jake lunged upward, grabbed the chain of the lamp which hung above him, and ripped free of the doorkeeper's clutching fingers. He swung backward and used the packed earth in the doorway to push off, and then swung forward again like Tarzan on a vine. He raised his legs and kicked out at the clutching fingers as he closed on them. Plaster exploded in chunks, revealing a crudely jointed skeleton of lathing beneath. The plaster man roared, the sound of intermingled hunger and rage. Beneath that cry, Jake could hear the whole house collapsing, like the one in the story of Edgar Allan Poe.
Yes, indeed. So that is the fall of the House of Usher. Is the short story that's being referenced there. So yeah, that's a good reference. I mean, King, throwing out the old literary references. That's a common thing. Maybe not as common as blue chambray shirts or characters that are writers, but it is common. At times, there's even times I'm like, come on, King. Like he has this like blue collar character that just like starts to like, quote like this like these literary characters. I'm like, dude, that guy's not going to know that. Come on, King. Just because you know that doesn't mean that, like, this, like, I don't know. It doesn't happen often, but there are times where I'm like, King.
All right,
it's
King.
like, come on. Not everyone's that well-read.
Yeah.
So then here at the end here, this subchapter says, there was a thick crunching sound from the end of the hallway as the plaster man finally pushed its hungry face through the opening. So it's been struggling with that French door up to this point.
Yeah.
So now that gives way. So now there's kind of an unobstructed path to Jake there. It says Jake swung helplessly back towards that face, screaming. So again, great way to leave us from a subchapter here. And this is one of those things, like, if you're reading this and it's like 2 a.m. and you got to work the next day,
I'm going to keep going.
You can't stop. Like,
Nope.
It's unfair. Like, when you look at this, it's like, come on, all these subchapters, but every single one ends where it's like, I can't stop reading.
No.
So, like, and that's why I'm glad this has fallen the way that it has, because it would be absolutely torturous if this would have, like, fallen to a spot where we were, like, 3 hours into one episode and we had to stop, like, here. Like,
yeah, we wouldn't do it.
That would be fucking brutal, man.
Yeah.
That would be brutal. So, good for King, though. He's keeping us on the edge of our seat. But
for sure.
Jumping over to subchapter 37.
Eddie's terror and panic suddenly fell away. The cloak of coldness dropped over him. A cloak of Roland of Gilead had worn many times. It was the only armor the true gunslinger possessed, and all such a one needed. At the same moment, a voice spoke in his mind. He had been haunted by such voices over the last 3 months. His mother's voice, Roland's voice, and of course Henry's. But this one he recognized with relief was his own. And it was the last, calm and rational and courageous. You saw the shape of the key in the fire. You saw it again in the wood. And both times you saw it perfectly. Later on, you put a blindfold of fear over your eyes. Take it off, and look again. It may not be too late, even now.
So that's an interesting one.
I love that one where it's Eddie's voice instead of anyone else.
Yeah, I don't think we really get that very often.
No.
Because we get internal monologue, but it's usually just caged in like a normal paragraph and stuff. So to actually have it italicized in its own paragraph to where it is like that internal voice of Court or Jake hearing Roland or Roland hearing, he's heard the Man in Black a few times. There's these different voices. It's like that, but ultimately King's writing in a way to where it's his own voice. So that's a pretty cool thing to see because we haven't really seen anything like that before. And it works because I think Eddie's been Roland and Jake. It's been a tool, those voices. For Eddie, it's been tormentor. It's been kind of that. It's not to help him. It's never to help him with the voices he's had.
Right.
When it's Henry or his mom or whatever, it's always terrible things. It's not helpful. With Roland, it's always constructive. It's his father. It's Court. It's stuff like that. It's wisdom. It's sage advice and stuff like that. And Jake's kind of gotten the same deal by having. We saw it earlier a little bit ago in this episode. Jake had Roland's voice come to him and say, try the other board stuff. So it's usually constructive. And with Eddie, it's been destructive. So it's kind of cool to see his own voice come through, and it is constructive. It's kind of a flip, and it's kind of cool because I think it shows a progression of the character. I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, it's also like what you were talking about earlier with Eddie and Susannah is that there's the armor. There's that hardening that you were talking about that he still had to go through.
Yeah,
I think it literally just happened.
Yeah, exactly.
He even says like the line is like let me go back and
that moment of failure, that's kind of like the brick or the subway, you need those moments, or as his brother would be the first one, his brother's severed head, and then this is kind of that secondary one, and you need those things to make you a fucking badass, and it's luckily King's been shitting on Jake for a book and a half, so he's been hardening, but it's like this is Eddie's second big moment to...
It even calls out, it says, it was the only armor the true gunslinger possessed, and it was all such a one needed. Yeah. So it's just like, there's his armor. Chink, it's in place now. I kind of think of like the Power Rangers where they go from fighting as, normal teenagers to...
Yeah.
Okay, now we're Power Rangers. Let's do the what is it? Morphing?
Morphin time.
Morphin time. And then they become that. It's like, okay, well, look, there's their armor. But it's with Eddie and with Susannah and with Roland and with, hopefully with Jake, it's like a process to become a gunslinger.
Yeah.
Eddie just took his test.
Yeah.
He's taking his test is what it should be.
Well, I think with Jake, too, he might trump everyone because he's died. A couple times. A few times. That's got to be a very unique perspective on life and everything, is to die a couple times. That's got to be even something that Roland can't claim.
Nope.
And that's got. I mean, I think Jake was already, even that first moment we saw him in the way station, he was already kind of mature beyond his years. And I remember us talking about it then. I don't think that was poorly written, because I think sometimes authors are just like, they write a character and it's like, you're trying to make this a 12-year-old kid, but you're obviously writing it as a 20-something-year-old, and it's not working, man. You're not getting it. And I don't think it was that way. I think King did a good job of balancing like the kid element of Jake, but also the fact that he was kind of hardened by the fact that he had unloving and absent parents. He didn't have friends, and then he had been fucking killed, at that point. So it's just like, and then later he gets betrayed by another father figure to die again.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's had a lot of hardening. So where you said it, hopefully Jake has. I think he might already have it.
But we'll find out if he even gets through this.
Yeah, I think he's gotten further than you or I would have in this whole thing.
Damn right.
Because I think you said earlier on that you probably would have just given up. I may have been able to. I'm not giving myself a lot of credit, but up to the point we are now, though, nah.
Well, me hanging from a light's not going to end well in any circumstance.
Yeah, there would have been. I don't know when, but there would have been a moment from the time he entered to the time we're at exactly right now that would have broken me. It probably wouldn't have been early. I probably would have had some fight in me, but there would have been a point where I would have just been, this is.
I think when I turn around and I see a beastie coming out of the wall, that is the wall. That's where I'm just like, all right, this is where I die.
Yeah. This is it. Okay, so next up. The next note I have is right here. The next one, it says he was faintly aware that the gunslinger was staring at him grimly, faintly aware that Susannah was shrieking at the demon in the fading, but still defiant voice. Faintly aware that on the other side of the door, Jake was screaming in terror, or was that now agony? So that's a great thing for King to throw in there.
Yeah.
But what I love is that first line. He was faintly aware the gunslinger was staring at him grimly, because I don't think that that's like a judgmental thing. I just think that's like the grimly is like almost defeat. You see that in war movies and stuff where there's just a moment you realize like it's done. Like you're not going to survive. Like whether it's the Alamo or something, you understand at a certain point like we're fucked.
Yeah.
And I think that's the grimly in my thing where it's just like Roland realized like that because I don't read that as like he's looking at Eddie like how fucking shitty are like Eddie would expect him, like if Eddie listens to Henry, he would expect Roland's looking at him going, dude, you're a fucking piece of shit, but I don't think Roland's that way. I think it's just like
it's that moment where you're the player on the sideline for a sports team and the player on the field didn't make the play and it's the fuck, we lost, but it's not the you fucking idiot, you cost us the game. It's the oh fuck, we lost.
Yeah.
There goes the chance at the championship. We just lost the championship game.
Yeah.
You're standing on the sideline watching it happen. You're not the one that did it. You're also not mad at the one who did it.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
That's later for Twitter.
Yeah. That's where you get your dad to tweet out about how mad you are about your teammate.
It's crazy how much of that is happening. But
I know, right?
Next note.
So he pulls the key out, Eddie does, and he's looking at it. And there it was, the place he'd gone wrong. So clearly visible he couldn't understand how he'd missed it in the first place. I really must have been wearing a blindfold, he thought. It was the S shape at the end of the key, of course. The second curve was a bit too fat. Just a tiny bit. Knife, he said, and held out his hand like a surgeon in an operating room. Roland slapped it into his palm without a word.
Scalpel.
And I love that while Roland is like this goes to what you're talking about. If Roland's pissed at Eddie, he's not doing a damn thing for him.
Yeah.
He's like, you fucker, you cost us, you killed him.
Yeah.
Like we're all gonna die now because of you, that kind of thing.
It's like if Susannah had missed a shot, Roland's waiting for them to take the next shot.
Yeah.
And that's I think what Roland's sitting there doing. Is like the Grimly is like, okay, we're getting close to being fucked here. And he's just waiting. Like, is Eddie gonna collapse?
Is he gonna? Are we losing?
Yeah, is he gonna collapse and this is the end of it, or is Eddie going to pull himself together and
he was ready.
Yeah,
and Roland was ready because
when is he not?
But he had. It almost is like if you don't have faith in Eddie, then you're not going to be ready.
Yeah.
But Eddie said knife, and Roland's like, "Fuck yeah, here we go, boy."
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I do love the fact that it's the S thing too, because it's almost like he was warned about that as well.
Yeah.
Because when he was looking at the image both times, the S thing that's the trick. Like both times that was called out.
It looks complicated. It looks delicate.
No, but it would say like the S shape. That's the trick. Like both times it was called out as a specific thing.
Yep.
So it's like it's almost like whatever it is, whether it's his subconscious, whether it's some kind of outside force, focused him on that specific thing. Mm-hmm. So it's like over everything else, that specific thing was called out both other times that he's seen that shape. We were there with him. And so for the fact that he messed that up, it's like it said, he must have been wearing a blindfold.
Right.
Because like not only did he see it 2 times clearly, but both times we were there in his head to know that the S was called out to his attention of like, that's the trick.
This is it.
Focus there almost. So I love that aspect too, because it's just like, again, there is some kind of blindfold, and like I've been saying it for a couple episodes now. It's like neuroses, like he's a neurotic personality, and that's built from a few different things, but it's like there is neuroses, and those neuroses are almost a blindfold for him to where. Yeah, it was like self-defeating, and so it's cool to kind of see him break through that. Then here at the end of this subchapter, it says he scraped once delicately a single sliver of ash so thin that it was almost transparent, curled up from the belly of the S shape at the end of the key. On the other side of the door, Jake Chambers shrieked again. So King just keeps jabbing us with Jake at the end of these subchapters. It's just like, hey, just remember this kid's like in agony potentially right now. King's calling it shrieking here, but the line earlier says, is it fear or is it agony? So we don't know. It could be either one. So we're just as unsure as Eddie is at this point. But jumping over to subchapter 38.
Yeah, right at the beginning.
Oh, and then I'll say, Alan did say in the chat, this scene is fantastic. Love it. I agree, man. This is like, I don't know how, we've never actually done like an official, like all-time, like series, like top 5 moments. But like if we did, I would wonder if this would show up and like how often or how highly it would be ranked. Like we've kind of talked about it. I think we're not going to get into it here because it's on a round table, but we had those discussions a bit, and I think we have certain scenes that always get mentioned, but I don't think we've ever told people we're going to do like a legit list because I think we'd have to do that to see like maybe a whole 5 actually spelled out. I'd be curious because this is a great fucking scene, and it is edge of your seat stuff too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So in subchapter 38, we're back with Jake again. The chain let go with a rattling crash, and Jake fell heavily, landing on his knees. The doorkeeper roared in triumph. The plaster hand seized Jake around his hips and began to drag him down the hall. So, fuck.
And I've got the other, I went back to the cover picture on the slideshow, so we got that. You could see that hand there, so that's got him.
No.
Just like he's a little like jumbo shrimp.
No. Stop it.
Pulling him in. So, stop it. Oh man, what is? I can't remember. There's a movie where it's like, stop it. I can't remember what it is. It's so funny though. Okay, sorry. Subchapter 38. A little bit further down. Got you son of a bitch. He screamed and threw himself backwards with all of his strength, bowing his back like an Olympic diver, unmindful of the broken boards which dug into him like a belt of nails. He felt his jeans slide on his hips, and the grip of his hands slipped momentarily. So basically, it's just like just like a full body like squirm,
backbend,
just to get it to kind of lose its grip, and it makes sense. That's exactly a perfect thing to do, and it looks like he at least got a momentary slip of the hand. So good for Jake there, but he has lost a sneaker, and now his pants are coming down a little bit here.
Yep. So he keeps pushing back on the hand, and he ends up losing his pants, his jeans, and his remaining sneaker. And then a little bit further down it says, then he was crawling back toward the blocked doorway on his hands and knees, oblivious of the glass fragments from the fallen lamp, wanting only to get the key again. He had almost reached the door when the hand closed over his naked legs and began to pull him back once more. Fuck a duck. Let him go.
It's like, King, you're a monster. So, yes.
Well, I mean, that's obvious.
So, subchapter 39. Starting off here, says the shape was there now, finally all there. Eddie put the key back into the keyhole and applied pressure. For a moment there was resistance, and then it resolved beneath his hand. He heard the locking mechanism turn, heard the bar pull back, and felt the key crack into in the moment that it had served its purpose. He grasped the dark, polished knob with both hands and pulled. There was a sense of great weight wheeling up on an unseen pivot, the feeling that his arms had been gifted with boundless strength, and a clear knowledge that the two worlds had suddenly come in contact, and a way had been opened between them. And I think that's so. What I love here is like the fact that it barely worked. So he took a little bit off, and it almost wasn't enough.
Or was it too much?
Well,
I'm just saying it could pull both ways.
If there's resistance that broke, I'd almost say that it would probably be not enough still. Because I think if you went too much, it would just turn without any kind of.
Unless you went too far the other way.
It's like the teeth, right? And then if you keep like carving it away, eventually the teeth are going to be too carved, and then it's not going to do anything. It's just going to kind of flop around in there without any. So I think it's just like one of those where it's like he just took a tiny little bit off. It's almost transparent, it said. So it's like he probably could have done a little bit more, and it probably would have done like smooth as butter. But this one, it was like there was a little bit of resistance. So it's like, but it worked. So I love that. And then I love that there's almost like, it says, and with a clear knowledge that the two worlds had suddenly come in contact and a way had been opened between them. That's hard to perceive what that means. You know, like, so it says like, and a clear knowledge. So it's like, it's not like an internal thing. Like a clear, I guess knowledge can kind of be internal, but I feel like there's almost like some kind, like if it was a movie, there'd be some kind of sound effect or some kind of something that just signified that there was like a connection.
I could see like the camera, like as Eddie pulled the door open, the camera shoots up and then goes down in, and you're coming down the hallway towards Jake, you know, wrestling with the plaster man.
Yeah.
That's a way of showing that it's connected.
I almost wonder if sound-wise, though, what you could almost do is almost like you said, the noise-canceling headphone, like that sucking noise of like, because you see that with like space movies where there's like that connection and like the, you know, like the two things like pressure locking. Like it could be something like that. It just seems like it's cool to me because again, it's the mechanics of it to where it's like once he has it and it turns it, then suddenly there's like this weird knowledge of an actual connection to the two worlds, because that's got to be a pretty legit crazy thing, like to connect two unrelated worlds to each other.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything legit about it. I think it's crazy to think about. Like, you go crazy and insane to think that two worlds are connected in some way. To even consider that there's another world out there.
Yeah.
To have it connected in some way. I don't think that it would be like a sucking sound or like a pressurization. I think it would be the exact opposite. I think all of a sudden you'd get air blasting through it because you got a summer day coming into a hailstorm.
Yeah.
You'd have something. I think it would be the exact opposite of what you're describing. Instead of like a connecting sound, I think you get this whoosh, like a huge wind coming through.
I think there'd be a lot of heat right there by the door too, because it's a summer day inside of a mansion that's been abandoned. Like, how hot would that be?
There's no air conditioning in there. Plus, it's roaring. You know.
Yeah.
I think that's what about if you did that? Eddie starts to pull the door, and then a roar blasts it open.
Yeah.
And throws him and Roland back, you know? And then they come crawling up, and then they look down into the door, and they see my next note.
Which is disorienting, too. The whole... like, that just, like... Because, again, I thought that the second he started drawing, I'm like, he's drawing on the ground. Like, Jake's not... Unless he finds, like, a freaking attic door, like, it's not going to be a horizontal door, so it's like, this is going to be weird.
Yeah,
it's like, what's that stupid game with like the portals where things like fly around and different whatever, and like you have to like shoot guns to like.
It's literally called Portal.
Is it?
It's literally called Portal.
Okay. I mean, I think of myself like Halo. There's that original Halo had that portal thing, but there was never a time that it changed perspective. If it did, that would have been really fucking weird.
Yeah, where you
go straight through a door, but it drops you down.
You jump down, and then you come out of a wall.
Dude, that would be crazy.
And the higher you jump off, the farther out from the wall you go. Yeah.
Oh, no, I've gone cross-eyed.
Speaking of that, it said, he felt a moment of dizziness, because Eddie's now looking through the door. He felt a moment of dizziness and disorientation, and as he looked through the doorway, he realized why. Although he was looking down vertically, he was seeing horizontally. It was like a strange optical illusion created with prisms and mirrors. Then he saw Jake being pulled back down the glass and plaster-littered hallway. Elbows dragging, calves pinned together by a giant hand, and then he saw a monstrous mouth which awaited him, fuming some white fog that might have been either smoke or dust. "Roland!" Eddie shouted. "Roland, he's got..." And he was knocked aside.
Yeah, so honestly, I don't know what would be more disorienting, looking at Eddie, looking down a door that's then going vertically or horizontally, or Jake, if he wasn't grabbed, if Jake was just standing there, then looking through a door that's vertical and it's looking up. Like, I don't know which would be worse.
Yeah.
They're both my stomach had like a little bit of a like
butterfly,
just something, because I'm like, both ways I try to imagine that, it's just like, yeah, whoa, like I don't know what the fuck. I don't know, because I think it's just like your, what's the inner ear thing, like your like vertigo or whatever. I just think that would be something that would fuck with you to have that.
Alan says, "I'm a sound designer and you guys are giving me ideas, LOL." When we're talking about the door what it would sound like when you open the door.
Yeah. It's I would imagine it'd be in my mind. I picture it being a sound more than anything, but I don't know. Maybe.
I like the if you're doing a film, I like the visual aspect of. You're behind Eddie as he opens the door. You dive down into the door, but all of a sudden you're just going shooting down a hallway. That would be real. Imagine the people in the audience that, like you talked about, just like that force in your stomach, just like, whoa, you get that butterflies going in your stomach,
Yeah.
Like you're on a roller coaster. Imagine a movie doing that to you. It's there is a scene in a kids movie that does that. They dive through a door that's laying on the ground.
It's
Monsters Inc.
Yeah, Monsters Inc. Yeah.
They dive through the door.
I actually thought of that movie when I was reading this the first time.
Yeah, they come out vertically and then plop down because gravity grabs them.
First time I read this, I actually thought of that.
Yeah.
Because I was like, as I was reading this, I was just like, because, I haven't probably watched that movie since close to when it came out. Wasn't it 01, 02, something like that?
I think it was like 04.
It wasn't. I was thinking it was earlier than that. But either way, it's been a long, long time since I've seen it, and it would have been closer to the time that I would have read this. But I remember that kind of coming to mind because I do remember that whole thing because they had like the whole factory of doors and stuff. And when they started to kind of play with it in different ways, there were definitely doors in different orientations as people were trying to go through. So.
It was 2001.
Okay.
Yeah.
As I say, I'm usually not wrong with that stuff. That isn't necessarily one that's fully in my wheelhouse, but. I don't know. It is one that I own though, so I guess I will say that's usually how they stick in my head. Is having them, I put them in my list and stuff, and yeah. So, subchapter 40, jumping in here. Starting off says, Susannah was aware of being hauled up and whirled around. The world was a carousel blur, so there's another one for your stomach.
Yep.
Standing stones, gray skies, hailstone littered ground, and a rectangle hole that looked like a trap door in the ground. Screams drifted up from it. Within her, the demon raved and struggled, wanting only to escape, but helpless to do so until she allowed it. Now, Roland shouted, "Let it go now, Susannah, for your father's sake, and let it go now," and she did. So that's a great way to end and again, it's on its own line there, so gotta love that. Calls attention to it. And again, this is the other one, this whole demon thing. Always forget about this. 100%. Like every time I read this, it's like, oh yeah, I fucking forgot about that. Don't know why. Probably because I read it fucking fast every time I do this. Audible is its own speed. I never turn the levels up on Audible. Some people, you could turn it up to 1.5 to 2 or whatever to make it go faster.
Yeah.
I never do that. But yeah, I think I'm just so fucking locked in that small details I drop out of this section.
Yeah, it's true. Even when you're listening, you're still going to miss things as your anticipation for getting through the action-packed sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so I love just the craziness of everything there, but then also the fact that the command. So whatever Roland has planned, we're about to see it. So subchapter 40, what's your next note?
As its invisible weight fell away, she glimpsed it, an inhuman shape like a manta ray with huge curling wings, and something that looked like a cruel bailing hook curving out from beneath. She sensed the thing flash above the open hole in the ground, saw Eddie looking up with wide eyes, saw Roland spread his arms wide to catch the demon. The gunslinger staggered back, almost knocked off his feet by the unseen weight of the demon. Then he rocked forward again with an armload of nothing. Clutching it, he jumped through the doorway and was gone.
So, seems like that was his plan. And
yep.
That does work out. Yeah, again, dude, a month ago, if you would have been like, hey, what happens to the demon in the speaking ring when Jake's being pulled through?
You would have been like, demon?
I would have been like I would have, all the stuff with Susannah, I remember, but anything past that, no, I wouldn't have remembered. I'll admit it, man. I just, yeah. Like I said, I said it earlier. There's another one that was like that. I said there's 2 in this section. This is the second one. For some reason I forget it. So then jumping over to subchapter 41, it starts up here. It says, sudden white light flooded the hallway of the mansion. Hailstones struck the walls and bounced up from the broken boards of the floor. Jake heard confused shouts and then saw the gunslinger come through. He seemed to leap through it as if he had come from above. His arms were held far out in front of him, the tips of the fingers locked. Well, what fingers are left?
Oh. Hashtag Tad is terrible.
Jake felt his feet slide into the doorkeeper's mouth. Roland, he shrieked. Roland, help me. The gunslinger's hands parted and his arms were immediately thrown wide. He staggered backwards. Jake felt serrated teeth touching his skin, so that's a fun one. Ready to tear flesh and grind bones, which that makes it even more. And then something huge rushed over his head like a gust of wind. A moment later, the teeth were gone. The hand which had pinned his legs together relaxed. He heard an unearthly shriek of pain and surprise begin to issue from the doorkeeper's dusty throat, and then it was muffled, crammed back. So, just crazy again, because Jake hasn't perceived the difference in orientation to the door that much. He's obviously busy.
Yeah.
But
being dragged into a mall.
He sees it here as Roland seemingly, because we know why, Roland dove down into a door, but then in this world he's coming through horizontally, so it's kind of weird. He's probably going to come through some oomph. That again, the mechanics of it's really cool, and obviously looks like Roland did some slam dunk action there.
Yeah.
So what do you got next?
Roland grabbed Jake and hauled him to his feet. "You came," Jake shouted. "You really came." "I came, yes. By the grace of the gods and the courage of my friends, I came."
Yeah, and I love that because he is giving credit.
Yeah, he doesn't shy away that it wasn't just him.
Yeah, and like ultimately, like
he didn't do much.
He's asking a lot of his companions in this whole thing. He does his part here. Obviously, he's the one that actually dives to the door. He's the one that's helping Jake. But ultimately, he's it's Susannah going through probably the worst of it. Eddie having to kind of confront his deepest fears to kind of be the one that's he's at home plate. It's his ball to hit, and that's not necessarily that not something that Eddie is ready for necessarily mentally. So Roland's done his thing, but those two are the ones that really had to struggle there. Then next up, Roland swept Jake into his arms and ran for the door. The plaster hand groping wildly, struck one of his booted feet and spun him into the wall, which again tried to bite. So that's fun.
Ugh.
Roland pushed forward, turned, and drew his gun. He fired twice into the aimless thrashing hand, vaporizing one of its crude plaster fingers. I don't know why I didn't stop and say, "See, join the club." Behind them, the face of the doorkeeper had gone from white to dingy purplish black, as if it were choking on something which had been fleeing so rapidly that it had entered the monster's mouth and jammed its gullet before it realized what it was doing. So, that's again, not only are you defeating the demon, but you're defeating the doorkeeper by slam dunking him with a demon. I just love that because, again, now we're seeing Roland kind of be the gunslinger. Mm-hmm. So he's able to draw his gun and kind of do his thing here, as well as he's carrying Jake. And, we had the moment that you read where, Jake is, I think in a way, probably kind of like surprised. I don't know if it's surprised, but the fact that he's saying, like, you came, like, I think there's a relief. There's something involved. Yeah. There's a lot of emotion involved there. So that's all I got. What do you got next?
Roland turned again and ran through the doorway, although there was now no visible barrier. He was stopped cold for a moment, as if an unseen mesh work had been drawn across the chair. Then he felt Eddie's hand in his hair, and he was yanked not forward, but upward.
Yeah, so this is now where it becomes a challenge, because you can jump down into the hole and fly in with some oomph, but now when you're trying to go the other direction... Now there's like a weird two gravity thing going where it's like one gravity is going one way, the other gravity is going another way, and they're not going to work with each other. So it's like, just going through that door is going to be a challenge, which is probably good that Roland dove through then, because I don't know if Jake would have been able to get through on his own, even if there were no monster, because that's a lot of not only is it a strong pressure, but also it's like, how do you comprehend that in your head that it's like a different gravity thing. So pretty crazy there. Jumping over to subchapter 42. Mm-hmm.
Jumping
off of the top here, it says they emerged into wet air and slackening hail like babies being born. Eddie was the midwife, as the gunslinger told him he must be. He was sprawled forward on his chest and his belly, his arms out of the sight in the doorway, his hands clutching fistful of Roland's hair. So. Ow. That hurts. Yeah. that hurts. Definitely. I mean, there's obviously other painful things going on here. At one point earlier, Jake was crawling across broken glass with no pants on. So there's a lot of pain involved. But getting
not to mention what Susannah went through. I mean, let's not discount that.
Oh, absolutely. But like having your whole your body weight and a child's body weight on your hair, somebody grabbing your hair and all that weight on. Yeah. That's not fun.
Speaking of hair, Eddie felt a tearing sensation and one of his hands came free holding a thick lock of the gunslinger's gray-streaked hair. He's slipping. This motherfucker ain't nowhere, Susannah gasped and gave a terrific wrench as if she meant to snap Roland's neck. Two small hands shot out of the doorway in the center of the circle and clutched one of the edges. Freed of Jake's weight, Roland got an elbow up, and a moment later he was boosting himself out. As he did it, Eddie grabbed Jake's wrist and hauled him up.
Yeah. Yeah, again, that's the worst thing ever is getting your hair pulled, right? I mean, just
how?
Yeah.
What do you got to talk about? You got no hair.
It happens to me all the time. People just grab me by the hair and pull and ow.
What hair? Get out of here.
That's why it always takes me a while to go out. When I'm going to a movie or something, I got to do my hair.
Shut up.
I guess for the podcast people, I don't have hair.
Tad's bald.
I shave my head, so that's the joke. I guess it's more for the YouTube side.
Yeah.
Okay, so then next up, a little bit further down here, I'm losing my notes. Roland crawled away from the hole with his head down. His hair stood up in a wild wad, threads of blood trickling down his cheeks. So yeah,
owie.
Yeah. There's getting your hair pulled out, and there's getting your hair pulled out to the level where it's going to make you bleed.
It's like pulling out chunks of grass.
Yeah. Shut it, he gasped at Eddie. Shut it for your father's sake. Eddie got the door moving, and with those vast unseen hinges did the rest. The door fell with a gigantic toneless bang, cutting off all the sound from below. And see, I love that too, because I just hear you can hear that bang, and there's all this sound that's happening, and then it just instantly immediately cuts off. And that's just stark. That's really let's see. As Eddie watched, the lines that had marked its edges faded back to smudge mark of dirt. So again, the mechanics of it all. Now that it closes, it immediately goes back to being mud. The doorknob lost its dimensions, and it was once again merely a circle he had drawn with a stick. Where the keyhole had been, there was only a crude shape with a chunk of wood sticking out of it, like a hilt, or like a hilt of a sword from a stone. Now that's quite an image. I think we could all picture that there, which just makes it seem hilarious because all this that just happened. Just imagining the image of just this thing of dirt with just a tiny little stick sticking out, and that's it. It almost makes it feel like, wait, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
All this shit, and all that's left now is a little stick in the ground. Like a little baby Groot at the end of Guardians of the Galaxy, a little stick.
Right after that, Susannah went to Jake and pulled him gently to a sitting position. You all right, sugar? He looked at her dazedly. Yes, I think so. Where is he? The gunslinger. There's something I have to ask him. I'm here, Jake, Roland said. He got to his feet. Drunk walked over to Jake and hunkered down beside him. He touched the boy's smooth cheek almost unbelievingly. You won't drop me this time. No, Roland said. Not this time, not ever again. But in the deepest darkness of his heart, he thought of the tower and wondered.
So where do you fall on that? When you read that, especially the first time, if you remember, how did you perceive that?
Huge doubt for Roland right there.
How did you perceive it? Did you perceive his words or his mind? What did you want to believe one way or the other? Did you
Well, of course I want to believe that he's not going to hurt the kid again. I mean, I didn't want to believe that he did it in the first place. So of course, I mean, I'm always, I'm a light side. I'm good guy, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't do something that horrible again.
Yeah. Yeah, I was definitely conflicted, but I think there was part of me that kind of believed his words, even though it's giving me doubt in the non-dialogue there. I think there was just part of me that kind of believed it, where it's just because I think the madness that was Roland is being driven to, I think there was something there that really drove kind of the importance of what Jake is into him a bit. I don't know. There was just something about it that I guess I believed his words more than his thoughts. And I don't know if that was the right thing to think, but I remember the first time reading it, I kind of leaned that direction. 'Cause I feel like you're getting two things there, right? And you can kind of look at it either way. Is it his mind or is it his words? And for some reason, dude, at this point, I had read this much of the series. I probably should know not to trust Roland, but I did. I don't know why. And I was just curious if you had any, of course you wanted to go one way, but did you think
I didn't believe that he would keep his word.
Yeah.
There's the reason that the doubt's there. You know?
Yeah. All right. That's totally fair. I just, for some weird reason, I had the idea in my mind where it's just all I'm going to believe your words. Like, you've gone through a lot. Your mind almost broke. You know, like, you were weeping. You know, like, it just felt like maybe he learned something from that. But, of course, the doubt is there. So I have to kind of ignore that to believe what I was believing. So, again, and I've seen him do a lot of heinous-ass shit. So maybe I was a fool. We'll see. So subchapter 43, let's see, starting off here, it says the hail changed to a hard driving rain, but Eddie could see gleams of blue sky behind the unraveling clouds in the north. The storm was going to end soon, but in the meantime, they were going to get drenched. He found he didn't mind. He could not remember when he had felt so calm, so at peace with himself, so utterly drained. This mad adventure wasn't over yet. He suspected, in fact, that it had barely begun, but today they had won a big one. So, just a cool moment there. I also love that Eddie's the one that's seeing the blue sky. That feels like a gunslinger thing. So I feel like that's kind of a little bit to kind of show you that Eddie's kind of learning.
He's
growing, learning, like he's becoming a gunslinger, you know, because I don't think Eddie from book 2 ever would have been the one to be in a storm like this and look to see blue sky. He would have been one that would have just focused on the rain and been like, this is fucking miserable, you know. So it's growth and it's gunslinger stuff. So I do like it. Good stuff there.
Yeah, and so Eddie asks if Susannah's okay and if it hurt her, and she says, "Hurt me a little, but I'm okay. I think that bitch Detta Walker is still the undefeated Roadhouse champion, demon or no demon." "What's that mean?" She grinned impishly. "Not much, not anymore, thank God. How about you, Eddie? You all right?" Eddie listened for Henry's voice and didn't hear it. He had an idea that Henry's voice might be gone for good. "Even better than that," he said, and laughing, folded her into his arms again. Over her shoulder, he could see what was left of the door, only a few faint lines and angles. Soon the rain would wash those away too.
Yeah, so kind of getting this as we're wrapping up this quote unquote book, the book within a book. We're kind of getting some closure. Jake and Eddie, Jake and Roland. Now you got Eddie and Susannah. And I just kind of like it how it's kind of pairing out and you're kind of seeing people interact with each other and stuff. So that's great. So then jumping over to subchapter 44, we see kind of more of it. I guess I'll just say it because it's this pattern you see over these couple subchapters where it's like you kind of see it. Like I always say with like the Avengers, I love with Avengers is like every character has like their moment with Loki. And like this is kind of that a little bit like that where you see kind of each character interacting with each other. Like you see, Roland and Jake, you see Eddie and Susannah, and then as we move into this one, we're going to see a little bit more crisscrossing. And I love it because it's just like kind of cool to see like all the different things. But go ahead.
"What's your name?" Jake asked the woman whose legs stopped just above the knee. And he was suddenly aware that he had lost his pants in the struggle to escape the doorkeeper, and he pulled the tail of his shirt down over his underwear. There wasn't much left of her dress either as far as that went. "Susannah Dean," she said. "I already know your name." "Susannah," Jake said thoughtfully. "I don't suppose your father owns a railroad company, does he?" She looked astonished for a moment, then threw her head back and laughed. "Why, no, sugar. He was a dentist who went and invented a few things and got rich. What makes you ask a thing like that?"
Which again reminds us of it because I would have forgotten at this point, and I even did for this book club about the fact that Susannah is the name in Charlie the Choo Choo,
the little girl. Yeah.
So, and then my note here is Jake didn't answer. He had turned his attention to Eddie. The terror had already left his face, and his eyes regained that cool, assessing look which Roland remembered so well from the way station. "Hi, Jake," Eddie said. "Good to see you, man." "Hi," Jake said. "I met you earlier today, but you were a lot younger then. I was a lot younger 10 minutes ago. Are you okay?" So, again, I just love like this crisscrossing. Like it just feels very comic booky to me, which I don't say that in a bad way. I mean that as a compliment. I always love those weird, like that's one of my favorite things like Infinity War was like all these weird characters interacting that have never interacted before. We're kind of getting this now where it's like all these people are talking to people that have never talked to each other before. It's cool.
Yeah.
I love it. And of course Eddie with the jokes.
Eddie's my man.
I was younger 10 minutes ago.
Yep. Jake responds, "Yes," Jake said, "some scratches, that's all." He looked around. "You haven't found the train yet." That was not a question. Eddie and Susannah exchanged puzzled looks, and Roland only shook his head. "No train." "Are your voices gone?" Roland nodded. "All gone." "Yours?" "Gone. I'm all together again. We both are." They looked at the same instant with the same impulse. As Roland swept Jake into his arms, the boy's unnatural self-possession broke, and he began to cry. It was the exhausted, relieved weeping of a child who had been lost long, suffered much, and is finally safe again. As Roland's arms closed about his waist, Jake's own arms slipped about the gunslinger's neck and gripped like hoops of steel. "I'll never leave you again," Roland said, and now his own tears came. "I swear to you on the name of all my fathers, I'll never leave you again." Yet his heart, that silent, watchful, lifelong prisoner of Ka, received the words of this promise not just with wonder, but with doubt.
Yeah. And again, this even just solidifies my wonder, because it's like, it just, for everything Roland said, the whole face of your father thing, the fact that he's swearing it on the name of all of his fathers is just, there's just something that feels different about that. Whereas, again, maybe I'm just hoping that, that this guy that's basically our main character is at some point going to kind of redeem himself from being a pretty shitty person for the first couple books. Mm-hmm. So again, maybe I'm just a cockeyed optimist, but I remember the first time reading this being like, I'm going to believe the words, not the mind. And then for him to say these words that are way more strong. But then, of course, King, to go in your direction of thinking, then brings up like that basically his heart doesn't just take those words with wonder, but with doubt. So still no clarity. For me, I think it's mostly just hope. I don't know. And I don't know if that's the right thing, because hope hasn't really been a
strong selling point yet.
It hasn't been a big aspect of this story up to this point, but that does close us out for this. And I will say, as a teaser, because you can do the same thing when you're reading this, as you look at the next page and it says Book 2, Lud, a heap of broken images. So just a little tease for what we got for 2022. Mm-hmm. So that's it for the normal book club. We are then going to move into our spoiler discussions. So if you are not finished with the 7 primary books of the Dark Tower series, you may want to stop this episode now. This is your line of demarcation. This is your warnings. If you haven't finished, stop the episode now. If you, it depends on your podcasting service, but if you're using like Spotify or something that saves all that shit on a cloud, you could stop it now, and then when you finish the whole series, you can come back to this episode and it'll start right back where you left off. Some episodes you have to delete your episode and stuff, and you may lose your location or whatever. But yeah, or YouTube, if you stop your YouTube video, if you're watching and you come back to it even 6 months from now, maybe you finish the series, you should be able to pick this video up right where you left off. So go ahead and peace out if you've not finished the series. Spoilers lie ahead. Okay, So jumping into the spoiler section, huge fucking section that we covered here. This is a big moment here for the series. So let's see. Yeah, okay. So my first one here is, what's crazy to think about is Susannah's raped here, and she's impregnated. We don't know that. We're not going to know that for a bit. But it becomes a huge problem, but it doesn't really start to become a problem until book 5. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't culminate in Mordred being born until book 6. So the question I would come up with this, is this the longest setup payoff in the whole series? Because we're about halfway through book 3, and we're not going to get a resolution to this really until book 6. And book 5, it becomes really heavy with like the pregnancy and Mia and stuff. But like, that's a huge like gap between your setup and payoff, unless you want to get like cheap and say like, oh, Roland in the Dark Tower. But like, I'm not going to buy that, because that's like saying like Frodo in the ring in the volcano or whatever. Like, to me, that doesn't count. But beyond that is a pretty big setup and payoff for the series. Is there any you can think of that are more extended than this? I mean, we have some here. Jake,
aside from the Dark Tower itself, there's nothing that comes to mind.
Because like Jake and there's other worlds in these, and then Jake coming back. That's all within a couple books, though.
Yeah.
Basically.
I mean, a couple books. I mean, this is book 3, and it starts right at the start of book 5. It's not much longer than Jake's payoff.
Yeah.
So
I guess it's probably the journey that makes it feel like it.
Because you got all of book 4.
Book 1, 2, and 3 up until where we're at now doesn't feel like that much of the journey. Mm-hmm. It feels like we're still kind of just at the beginning. Whereas like then when you get to like book 5 and 6, like you're at the other end of it now. Like think of like the miles. Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm not even perceiving it as much as like book density much as I'm thinking about the actual journey, where it's like, this takes a long fucking time for this actually to pay off, man.
Which is funny, because when you actually look at how much time has passed between now and book 5, it's even less than Roland from Jake dropping to now, because they go to Lud, they get on the train, they sit around and talk, and then they go on the other side of the Oz palace, and then it's book 5. Like, it's, I mean, time wise, no. Wheel wise, how many wheels they've gone? Well, yeah. I mean, they cover a shit ton of wheels with Blaine, at the helm and everything.
Yeah.
But when you look at time wise, it's not that much time. I mean, Roland talking about magus and stuff like that. That's a huge chunk there in the middle that they're just sitting around a campfire listening to the story.
But that's it. Well, I guess even if you go back to the book density question, I think it's only short if you call it to the Mia stuff in book 5. If you go to book 6 when Mordred's actually born, that's a good stretch.
But the pregnancy plays a part of book. Is a huge part of book 5.
No, I know, but I'm saying the actual birth. Like, okay, like there's the rape here, and ultimately the other end of it is the birth of Mordred. That's from book 3 to book 6 before that happened. So that's just a huge.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the birth of Mordred is where you get the payoff for it. That's not the only payoff for it. You have all the conflict in book 5 of her going out hunting and stuff like that, and Roland worrying about that, and then her worrying about if they know. There's a whole part of that.
But then ultimately she doesn't up and disappear until the whole of book 5's complete. So it just it's the very tail end of book 5 where it's like it really becomes like the issue, right? Because that's the other thing that's weird is you don't think about it when you're reading it the first time. It's like you don't. I mean, for one, you don't even. I didn't consider that she might be pregnant. So, but it's just one of those things you don't realize that a whole book of this, like book 6 is going to be really primarily focused on this baby that was conceived here. It just seems weird, and it's probably a combination of both the density of the books and the amount of story that's between them. Mm-hmm. It just feels like we're older people by the time we get to.
Well, think about the years that passed for people who had to wait.
Yeah.
You're looking at decades there between now book 3 and book, not decades, but a decade almost.
Yeah.
You got book 3 coming out in the 90s, and book 5 or 6, depending on which way you look at it, coming out in the 2000s. So.
Yeah. I missed Alan's message here where he says, for those who read or listened on audiobook, it could be a difference too. I'm not sure what that was in reference to. Sorry, I missed when that message came in, but I don't know if you saw it or not.
No, I don't know what that's about.
Sorry, I missed Alan. I missed when that came into the chat, so I'm not sure what it was in reference to. But yeah, that was my first discussion there. And then I already asked, kind of in the context of about if you believed Roland's promise. I already asked that because that wasn't necessarily a spoiler thing. And then but the part the second half of it that is part of the spoiler thing is, did you think about this promise when it all ends with Jake? Did you kind of flash back to this moment at all, or was it too far removed?
No, because it's not Roland's fault. Roland fully intended to throw himself in front of the van and be hit instead of Jake.
No, I know. So, but when all that's happening, did you connect in your mind back to this moment when Roland makes his promises?
No, because he didn't break his promise.
No, I know. But the fact that he made the promise, and the fact that you have that setup of the promise, and then it gets paid off with the fact that he tries to sacrifice himself. I'm just saying, like, when you're reading it in that moment, did you think back? Because I did. I actually remember remembering, because this moment kind of struck me of the fact that Roland made that promise, so much so that when that moment came, I did think about the fact of Roland's at least attempt, like in his mind, he was going to help Jake and he was going to sacrifice himself.
Well, it wasn't just in his mind. He physically tried to. That he couldn't.
Yeah, he physically couldn't. But I'm saying I actually remember thinking back when I was reading that to this promise and thinking like, oh, cool, like, because again, it was kind of a question in my mind. Like, you have his words in his mind, they're split. How's it going to pay off? And I remember, I just remember, even though it's a long ways away, when we finally got to that moment, I remember thinking, oh, awesome. Like that, he gave that promise to Jake, and he's actually attempting to, like, at least in his heart, he was attempting to pay true on it. And I just remember thinking back to this as kind of a cool callback connection to this promise. So I was just curious if anyone else, when they were reading it, kind of thought back to Roland's promise here when Roland tried to pay it off, I guess, or if it was just kind of a.
Well, it's not a pay it off. He's not paying a debt or anything.
No. Storytelling wise,
he's trying to keep his word.
No, storytelling wise, payoff. Like, there's the setup and payoff in the story. I'm not talking about Roland paying things off. I'm just saying for the story. For King, he plants this seed, and we're ultimately going to get it paid off in book 7. I guess I'm just curious if like it struck your mind of Roland's, or is it like on a reread when you already know how it's going to end? Do you hit that line and realize like, oh, cool, here's Roland making a promise, and I know that he's going to attempt to fulfill it, type thing? I guess, like, for me, it's a storytelling question more than, like, I'm not trying to like give like judgment on Roland or anything. It's not anything about that. It's more of just like from King's perspective. I love those things when something is like a little seeds thrown out there and then later it'll pay off one way or the other. And so when that payoff happened, I remember thinking back to this promise and going, cool, King, thank you for especially because I know decades are between these books. Thank you for actually kind of resolving this in a way, even though it didn't work out, because Roland has to survive. But I'm glad that King gave us at least, because I think a lesser author almost wouldn't pay attention to like what he wrote 15 years ago or whatever, and he would just almost drop some of these things. And I'm just glad he didn't. So when I got to the moment of Jake's death, I went back to this and went, oh, cool. Like King kind of, I don't know. It makes it feel more complete. Like sometimes you read things and things feel like, especially if distances between them, there's times where it's like, God, dude, this guy didn't really keep track of what he was doing, and
where they like contradict each other.
It contradicts. Yeah. I mean, and King does that a little bit too. I mean, there's some stuff that doesn't, but I guess I love it from the storytelling. I think King did a lot of work to give us what he gave us, and
I mean, I would have liked it a little bit more if Roland had actually kept his word, and there would have been a point where it's choose, your quest or choose Jake, and he actually chose Jake. Doesn't feel like there was ever really like a payoff for it in that aspect, because he went to go save Stephen King to still save the tower.
Yeah.
Like there's not a choice between, okay, you have a choice of saving Stephen King or you have a choice of going and rescuing Jake from the Dixie Pig. That would have been a bigger thing for me, where I would have called back and been like, hey, good on you, Roland, good on Stephen King for actually resolving that. But for me, this is still hand in hand. It's the same thing. And he's not dropping Jake, but doesn't have to make that choice. You can't say both. The Spider-Man thing, you can't say both. The bus full of people or Mary Jane. There's not really a choice here. He's just doing one thing.
I guess I perceive it as that one or the other, because ultimately it comes down to, in Roland's mind, he's like, one of us might die in this, and it's going to be me. And of course, and ultimately it's King that fucks it over, right? Because it's King's injuries that are then projected onto Roland. So it's like, if it wasn't for King dragging his feet, Roland might have even sacrificed himself.
Still, that's in the name of the tower. If it had been saving Jake not in the name of the tower, then we would be having a different conversation here. But I still think that Roland's...
But isn't it forsaking the tower if he's going to sacrifice his life? Like
it's still saving. Saving the tower.
His survival and like him getting to the tower almost seems like a bigger part of things. A lot, especially for him, because he's got this. I mean, we're going to find out like swearing to his father and his friends, and his fallen love and stuff like. So it's a huge thing. So I guess I perceive it. That's how. And again, if we perceive it different, that's fine. I've always perceived it as Roland did make that choice, but it gets broken more by King's doing. That's why I always kind of see King as a little bit of a villain, because it's like him holding things off fucks the people over, and King holding off is why the van happened. So it's like, it's all his fault.
Alan says it in the chat. It was about Roland's promise. That is King being King. So
yeah,
I mean, it's just, for me, if you're gonna say praise Roland for making that choice and sticking to his promise that he made here to Jake, then it would have been something more clear, where it's, hey, go to the tower, save King, continue on to the tower, or go to the Dixie Pig and save Jake. But then it's a clear distinction between the two.
I think the difference is like, I guess why I'm perceiving this different is because if Roland is walking with Jake up towards the van with the idea of, I'm going to throw Jake there because I need to save the tower, but I'm not fucking dying. I need to get to the tower. Because that's the other choice in my mind, is one of us is going to die. And Roland that dropped Jake in book 1 would be the guy that would go, one of us has to die, and it can't be me.
But it's not. But it's not one of us will die. It's one of us could die. So he doesn't know that one of us is going to die. It's a choice, yes, that he's still going to try to save King, and he's going to be the one doing it. But also in the same vein, if that's going to be the thing, then why the fuck did Jake come in the first place? Make Jake stay. Then there's no question in your mind that he's going to be safe. Like, if Roland really wanted to save Jake, fucking make him stay. I mean, hindsight's 20/20, but again, he's a kid. He's a gunslinger.
And that's where I was like, do you think Jake would actually listen, though?
I think if Roland told him to do something, Jake would listen. He makes it perfectly clear in book 5 that he thinks of him as, like the leader and what is it, Da Din or whatever it is.
Yeah.
He's like, hey, if you tell me not to do something, I'm not going to do it. And Roland gets all offended, like, hey, you're still your own person. He's like, bullshit, I am.
Yep.
I'm still tied to your destiny. I'm still tied to you. So what you say fucking goes. So if Roland says, sit your fucking ass down and stay with Susannah, Jake's going to sit the fuck down and shut
up. I think if Jake perceived that it was being done because, like, you're a kid and I'm trying to protect you, I think he might get a little bit of the Cuthbert in him and he might try to fight. Not physically fight, but I think he would at least argue, kind of like in book 5 when he finally calls everyone out on their shit. Like, he's like,
yeah,
I know I'm like a kid here, but, like, this is fucking...
Pull your heads out of your asses.
This is fucking stupid. So, a little bit of a tangent, but ultimately, I wanted to bring that up. So then I also have another one I have is Eddie says they won the big one. This may not be the biggest victories for the Tet, but when you look over the whole story, is this the biggest victory that is a total team win in that everyone had a big part to play? Because like Blaine is probably the biggest, I think, in terms of most popular, but that's like Eddie. Like Eddie wins that. Roland doesn't have much of a part of that outside of just like going through riddles that don't work. So, like I think there's times where everyone kind of has their moment to shine, but is there another time that it's like the whole fucking group? The only other one that I can think of is the Wolves.
You have two victories as a team that come to mind. It's Agosiento and the Wolves, but are shortly followed up with losses.
Yeah.
It's like like in sports, you have a great win, you have a blowout, but then you have a short week, come around and get your ass kicked.
Yeah, and that's true.
And that's it with the Wolves.
So maybe that
even if you win with the Wolves, you have Susannah
leaves,
and then Agosiento, you have Eddie getting shot.
Yeah,
and then shortly after that, Jake dies.
Yeah.
I mean, those are both gut punches. There's no wins there.
Yeah,
you feel like you won.
Yeah,
you saved the beams. You saved Agosiento from the Wolves. You stopped the Wolves. They're never coming again.
Yeah,
you decimated their entire ranks.
Yeah,
you find out later. But still, at the end of the day,
so maybe
Susannah's still gone.
So maybe this one feels bigger because
there's no gut punch.
Punch after, and this is ultimately the first time we're seeing them work as a team, and they all play a part in this. So
even if Jake's on the other side of the door, he's still
doing his part.
He's still working towards the same goal: get him from A to B.
Yeah, so I do love that, but yeah, so I guess you're right with Agosiento calling that one out too. I blanked on that one, but yeah, so the Wolves, Agosiento, and this one, those are like the big team wins.
I think
there's other big wins throughout, but I think each of them have MVPs.
Yeah,
that are like the MVP of this win is this person, and yeah.
I think if you want to throw a team win out there that doesn't have a gut punch shortly after, because King's a dick when it comes to gut punching us shortly after a victory, is you got to look at the Dixie Pig. How the fuck Susannah and Jake survived that?
Yeah.
And Eddie and Roland got there in time to save Jake.
Yeah.
And then got there to save Susannah from Mordred and shit like that.
Yeah.
I mean, she mostly saved herself.
I guess.
There's not a gut punch shortly after that. And so that one would be up there, but I think this one would be bigger. Saving Jake from the doorkeeper. Oh hell yeah!
Well, here's another one I'll throw out there. It doesn't necessarily completely fix. It's the different Tet. But the end of book 4, the victory over the
but you still have the gut punch of Charyu Tree.
It's the gut punch.
That's the worst gut punch in the entire series.
That's the next question I was actually going to ask you is what gut punch is worse? Because like
that one's bad.
I think it's because of the build of the love story. I do think that one's worse. But we love Eddie and Jake so much that like that's pretty hard too.
Here's the other thing also with Charyu Tree with Susan's death is that. If Susan doesn't die,
Roland doesn't lose his soul.
Does Jake and Eddie die? Because I don't think either one of them would have died if Roland was Roland. If Roland had Susan and he's like, I mean, if Roland is able to save Susan, do you think he looks into the pink, the grapefruit? Because that's what gets him obsessed with the tower.
Yeah,
and you got to beg the question.
No,
there.
I actually 100% believe if she survives. He
delivers the pink to Steven without even fucking looking at it because he's traveling with Susan.
No, I would say overall, I don't think Roland becomes Roland.
No.
I don't think
he dies at the Battle of Jericho Hill or sooner.
Yeah.
She gets killed by Farson's men, and that's the last of the gunslingers.
I do believe that's how I perceive it.
Yeah.
And then Alan says, Oi and Jake, but holy shit. Yeah, I guess, I can't, because Oi's a gut punch, but he's a little bit more delayed, though, because he does come a bit later, so he doesn't feel like he's as much on the heels of a victory. He feels like
there's no victory.
He feels like the cherry on top of a shit sundae. Like he feels like you've been shit on for a bit, and then he's just the coup de grace, just like King going and stabbing you in the side.
It's the 1-2-3 punch, right? You get the body shot with Eddie, you get the cross with Jake, and then you get the fucking upper punch with Oi.
Yeah.
And then the upper punch was Susannah leaving, and then when you're on the ground, he fucking kicks you with Oi.
Yeah.
Kicks you when you're down.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's just a 1-2-3-4 is what it is.
Yeah.
So
King is a monster. He really is.
Oh, yeah.
So you have a couple.
Then I got a couple for spoiler talk. Did you honestly believe that Eddie would pull it off, or did you think he would fuck it up? Do you remember your first time? Because we know how you felt about Eddie coming into book 3.
I was pretty. I mean, I think it's hard because I do kind of approach stories from a perspective of like storytelling, and like there's too much build to like really believe that Jake would actually like die. So there's that element, but I was kind of concerned that something might get fucked up, and I might lay it on Eddie. So kind of 50. I guess it comes down to like just my straight mind and heart. I'd probably say I was kind of worried, but then if I stepped back like and became Roland and just thought straight logically, because that's my problem sometimes. Stories don't have as much effect on me because I start to analyze them like almost like a robot.
Well, if this is the story, then this has to happen.
Yeah, and it's just like if you build so much time with Jake, like he can't die. If he did, King would be like, who's George R. R. Martin for like fucking absolute monsters? Like, but. Because like but I think even King has some decency enough to like he wouldn't do that to you to like do that parallel journey the whole time and then Jake dies and it's just like okay, well that's the rest of the journey with these guys. Like
shit,
yeah, dude, and he'd probably lose readers. I bet you if that were to happen, I bet you like there'd be people that just put the book away and go, I'm done with that.
Yeah, I don't like this.
Like this is too brutal. But no, that's a good question. But there were like. Yeah, heart and mind, like without being super analytical about it, I was like slightly concerned just because of all the neurotic stuff. Like there wasn't the resolution to that stuff yet. Where I'm like, that shit's still fucking on it, man.
Yeah,
like he's still got those neuroses. Like
that's what I was wondering is because you had a lot of that from book 2. I remember us talking about it and you being like, I fucking hated Eddie the first time I read through book 2. Like, you couldn't stand the junkie side of him, and you don't trust junkies. And then into book 3, it's like, okay, he's cleaned up his act, but, once a junkie, always a junkie kind of thing.
Yeah, I always have the one eye of suspicion.
Yeah, exactly. And then Roland, this weight gets put on him, and you're like, well, for fuck's sake, this guy, you chose this guy to do that?
Yeah.
And then I was just wondering if there was like oh, boy, great, how's he going to fuck this up? And what I honestly picture you thinking in your mind is, and just tell me if I'm right or wrong, is Eddie's gonna fuck this up, and Roland's gonna have to figure out how to fix it before, and then save.
And that's pretty much what I perceived.
That's what I was wondering.
If there was like in my mind like that, the fear that it would get fucked up, like I figured it wouldn't be to Jake's detriment. I figured that like Roland, Roland would have to fix it somehow. So, yeah.
And then the last question I had is this easily the most cinematic scene in the entire series? Or can you think of one off the top of your head that would easily transition to film and be awesome?
Now, I think this one would probably be more awesome than it is more cinematic overall, but I do think Blaine is just there's a natural love in film for like think of courtroom dramas.
Tense
of
talking.
I'm just blanked on the fucking name of it. A few good men
or 12
Angry Men.
Yeah.
There's just that, and I feel like Blaine is that courtroom scene. It isn't super visually compelling. It isn't like a lot of special effects, action packed. But you're fucking in it, man. Mm-hmm. You're like, and I think Blaine could be cinematic in that element. But if you're talking cinematic in terms of the George Lucas special, special effects, sound effects, really cool shit going on. No, I think this probably beats Blaine.
The other one that comes to mind, of course, because I love the Wolves of the Call, is the Battle with the Wolves.
Yeah,
seeing the dust cloud in the distance and them riding in,
and that one's been on film how many times? Like the Seven Samurai.
Oh yeah,
it's been done so many times, and it's so proven that you're right. Like that's probably the most cinematic.
Because it's not only just the Seven Samurai, but it's also like, okay, here they come. You got like my dad used to watch these old war movies where it's the British and they're outnumbered 80-1, and the Zulu are coming across, like the open plains, and they're war chanting and stuff like that. You got Helm's Deep.
Yeah.
The outnumbered are, hunkered down and everything like that. And you're like, oh fuck, here we go.
Yeah.
Just to have them, hold their own and do everything they can to keep it from going, horribly wrong. And then you get that last minute rescue. The cavalry comes riding in and stuff like that. But in this case, the Wolves of the Call, you got the victory by Roland's just sheer brilliance of his plan.
Yeah.
But you get that in film, and I think that would be my question. Would that one be more cinematic, like just beautifully done? Could it be better than Jake's pulling? Because Jake's drawing is action, drama, thriller, horror, and just
like
heart-wrenching there at the end where it's like, you won't drop me again. That you could get a tear rolling down the sentimental ones like me, but not you.
The all-encompassing stuff that this series is in a nutshell is in this scene
exactly
that we just
which is why I really got to the end of this one, especially that last note where it's like, like Roland talking with Jake and making the promise, and then him talking to himself in his brain really got me thinking, like, God, is this the most cinematic moment written down in the Dark Tower series, and it really got me thinking that I really think it might be.
I think it comes down to how you define it too. Because the other thing part is like when it comes to like sheer like visuals, CanCon Array would be huge. But then you do then you do kind of have the letdown of how the Crimson King is beat. That is kind of anticlimactic.
Exactly.
Like I love it and I understand it, but ultimately it's like it is what it is. So I just don't think you're going to have the same kind of, like you there's a victory, but it doesn't feel as like, cinematic in terms of like dramatic. It feels like it's like there's some danger and then suddenly gets solved in kind of a Deus Ex Machina. So, but visually though, like that's one of my greatest desires is to see CanCon Array on
just
film.
the Field of Roses.
The Field of Roses, the tower, the clouds, like circling around the top of the like. Just I want to see that I've multiple times just Google image search where it's like, give me any version that somebody has come up with that's drawn it, that's painted it, because I want to see it because it's just it's a beautiful fucking thing, but it doesn't have the same
je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, it doesn't have all the same special stuff that this has when it comes to it gives you everything type thing.
Yeah, and I think with like the visual side of it, also the sound. I mean, Alan was talking about sound earlier. Just the sound of a house tearing itself apart to become a monster to try to eat a kid.
Yeah,
would be just astronomically off the board amazing if they did it right.
Yeah.
So I think just to me, I think that this would be could be the greatest cinematic part of this entire series.
It's certainly going to be one of the big ones. Like if you were to like chart it all out and say like what are your like top 5 moments, it's easily going to be in there. Like
it's gotta
easily.
Be.
Yeah, like it's certainly going to fall in there. And yeah, it would be an easy debate to have whether it would win that that debate. And then Alan says LOL let's see, the getting through the portal to the shop and getting the truck, that was a win. So, I mean, there's definitely, there's, I don't know.
But are you talking about the one in Maine where it's just Eddie and Roland going through the shop in the shootout and everything? Because that's not a quartet victory,
that's
right?
That's one of the previous victories I was talking about. Is there's a lot of victories in this series that are great and they make you like you're pumped, but usually there's one MVP. It's
TikTok man, down in Lud and everything like that. You got the MVP of Oi.
Yeah,
you got the MVP of Eddie versus Blaine. You got the MVP in the shop. I'd call it freaking Cullum is the MVP of that one. John Cullum is the MVP of that, saving Roland and Eddie's bacon.
Yeah. But what I love about this one that we just read though is just like that it seems like the sports analogy, the complete team win.
Yeah, all four of them pulled their weight.
Everyone had to pull their weight.
Yeah.
And those victories are a little, or maybe not more rare because maybe they're about evenly matched for big victories. But I just do think there is a distinction between the two, and not to say that one is better than the other. It's just it's like a Swiss watch though. When you see them all coming together and they all have their part, it's just beauty. It's a thing of beauty.
Yeah.
But there's also the beauty of Roland just being fucking Roland and doing his thing on his own, like, or Eddie being a fucking clown and beating the train.
That's my boy. That's my boy.
There's a beauty to those too. But yeah, I don't know. That's just it's fun to see, and we'll have to talk about that as we go through this series and get to maybe more of these victories. Maybe there's some we're forgetting. We'll have to see.
I mean, I got one off the top of my head. One of my all-time favorites is Eddie's fucking tongue lashing of Tower.
Yeah.
Putting him in his goddamn place. I fucking love that one. Because you get it from Roland. You get Roland putting people in their place. I mean, you even mentioned one the other day. I think it was on Discord where Susannah puts Took in his place at the store.
Yeah.
But, man, when Eddie puts Tower in his place, it's just one of those moments where you just want to stand up and you just got to be like...
And let's be honest, dude, Tower is a fucking deplorable.
He is horrible.
He's the worst, man. He's got to be one of the worst characters.
Is he worse than King? To you, is he worse than King?
Oh, absolutely.
You think he's worse than King? Yeah. Dragging his feet and getting Jake killed?
Yeah.
You think Tower's worse?
Dude, he's just... Okay, there is a love I have for King, obviously.
So
that gets fixed in there. And with King, it's just like, I don't know. I think that love is just hard to overpower, even though like I'm pissed at him in the story. But dude, Tower... He's just fucking grating.
Is there a redeemable quality about
There's
Tower?
not much redeemable about him, no. He's just, it's...
I think you're right about that.
Except that he's friends with Aaron Deepno. That's his one redeeming...
Deepno is a badass. I love Deepno.
Well, this is probably my favorite of the spoiler section so far, because there's a lot more to cover because of the section we did.
It's a great section, and I guarantee that going forward, spoiler section is going to be huge, especially with Lud, Blaine, and everything.
And Oi showing up.
Yeah. My Oi. We got to make sure. We got to make sure that when we do the Blaine section where the riddle is about to begin, we got to make sure to leave off and do like a 3-month break, just to give the listeners a taste of what it was like.
So this is going to be our last book club for the next 2 years.
Yeah. We're just going to give you guys a small taste of what it was like for the readers in our.
Because we didn't even go through that. So
we didn't go through it, but we got to exactly. We got to experience it, and you, the listeners that didn't experience it, have to listen to it. Fans that already had to deal with this, we apologize. We just want everyone to feel your pain.
Your collateral damage.
Yep.
All right, so we'll go ahead and close up shop real quick. So first of all, if you want to subscribe to us, you can do that on any podcasting service. You could stream us on Spotify or Stitcher. You can find the show notes at darktowerpalaver.com. There's no show notes for this episode, but you can find like our listener questions if you're a new listener. If you want to grab some of those questions and answer them via email, that's the way to kind of introduce yourself to the quartet, the extended quartet as it is. If you want to support the show, you can do that at patreon.com/darktowerpalaver. And I guess I should also throw it out there. I put a little tag on the last episode that our next episode in a fortnight from now is going to be our year-end bash. So go ahead and get your Skype set up and be ready to do some call-ins. If you want to call in on that show, our Skype is just Dark Tower Palaver is our Skype handle. Go ahead and get us added on Skype there, and it'll allow you to call in on that show live next time in 2 weeks. So then if you want to contact us other ways, Peter can let you know the ways to do that.
The best way to do it is email us, darktowerpalaver@gmail.com. Follow our shows. If you want to watch them live with the video and everything, it's youtube.com/darktowerpalaver. When we do the roundtables, you'll see the visuals. We even had some visuals today with this book club. So the video, subscribe, ring the bell so you get notifications of when we're going live. And then our social media is facebook.com/darktowerpalaver. The Twitter is @darktowerpod. That's @darktowerpod. Instagram is darktowerpalaver, all one word, no spaces. And then check out our merchandise. It's tpublic.com/user/darktowerpalaver.
Indeed. So yeah, we'll be back in a fortnight for our year-end bash. I don't have let me pull up the calendar real quick, because then we've got, we got that one, and then we got the 15th of January will be Roundtable 115. 29th of January is Roundtable 116, and then February 12th will be our next book club. So that'll be when we come together next for this. Subject to change. There may there's always possibilities for changes, but as of right now, that's the way it's spelled out going into 2022. And we're excited to come back to this one in next year and be starting off in book 2 called Lud.
Yeah.
So that's gonna be a lot of fun. So we'll see you guys in a couple weeks, and we'll sign off as we always do by saying long days and pleasant nights.
Long days and pleasant nights, folks.
All right, everyone in the YouTube, thank you guys for joining us. Always great to have you guys. We had Cody, Carol, Mark,
Lou.
Lou, Alan, kind of scrolling through it here. And then I said Carol already, right? Yeah. So thank you guys for joining us. You guys are awesome. It's always good to have you guys as part of the conversation. And yeah, this is a fun section. I mean, we had a lot of good stuff, but like this is one I've been excited for pretty much since we realized last time that this is what was going to be left for this episode. I was just like, I can't fucking wait for that episode. So I've been super excited for it. So you guys are awesome. Have a good holiday. I mean, we'll be back before all the holidays fully commence, but have a good December. Stay warm. And we'll see you guys in a fortnight.
Bye, everyone.
See ya.